step I take, I move my truth. Every time they tell me stop, I use every comment, hate that makes my feel. Gather up my energy and boom, I hear them talking, saying the way that I move is so reckless. That is a part of my mind I've been blessed with, giving my blood so I am relentless.
All right, I'm here with Ken Rideout. You're on the Keep Hammering Collective. It's an honor to have you.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. I feel slightly nervous and anxious, actually.
No.
Although after the beating you gave me on the run, I'm like good to go now.
I don't. Well, first of all, that didn't happen, but I don't believe you seem like the most confident person I've ever met. You're not.
Yeah.
What would you be nervous about?
I would say, nervous? Oh, just self-conscious, insecure, all the things that come with being a drug addict. But, but I would say that, much like a fighter, you're not going to come in advertising and appearing to be nervous when you are nervous. I get nervous about things that are important to me, things that matter. And this is an interview that matters, is important to me.
Oh, well, that's, I'll just tell you how I feel about this. I mean, I've been following along on your journey for a long time. I've been a huge fan. I've been inspired by, I don't know you personally, but I've seen your performances and how you can run. And it's like your times and, we don't make excuses for our age because, whatever the fuck, we're old as shit, but we still get it done.
That's it.
So that's been inspiring to me. You look you look shredded. Great stories, smart, capable. And so I'm like, God, this guy, I got to be on my A game for Ken Rideout.
You're going to make me cry.
Well, I'm just telling you how I feel. I mean,
thank you, man.
That's honest. I mean, it's, again, I've looked at a lot of your story or what I've heard about your story. And it's like, I've had other people listen to podcasts you've been on. I think maybe with Rich, maybe some others too. Cause I think maybe it was with Nick Bear. But anyway, you're just so, I don't want to say vulnerable, but I mean, just so open about your challenges. And to me, that was, I don't know, it's just, that's not what men do usually. Usually we like to, everything's fine. I'm the baddest guy out there, never show weakness. And I think I was inspired, part of that inspired me too, that you were so open and honest about your challenges.
Yeah, man. I feel like, first of all, I'm super honored and humbled to be here. Hearing all those things said about me, it doesn't even seem like you're talking about me. I'm just like you say in your book, I'm just like a regular guy, just trying to do the best that I can. But in terms of sharing the vulnerabilities, I think everyone feels those things. And, it's one of those things where when I start talking about it, people... And when I mentioned those kind of vulnerabilities initially on Rich Roll, people really connected with it. And I'm like, oh, do people feel insecure about sharing this? Like, no one's a savage all the time. Everyone has like emotional ups and downs. And it's been interesting to see how people connect with the vulnerabilities. And because I know what you mean about people. No one wants to show weakness. And I feel like sharing my vulnerabilities, I don't view it as a weakness. I view it as a strength. I'm in touch with what's going on. If I don't feel weak, if someone wants to try me, I'm a very easy person to find.
Yeah.
I don't feel weak physically. And I think, having gone through recovery, they'll tell you that you're only as sick as the secrets you keep. Mm-hmm. And I think talking about these kind of the vulnerabilities and the things that led me to addiction is therapeutic for me. And keeping that shit to myself didn't serve me very well. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't serve anyone very well.
Well, so you talked about what led you to addiction. What was your addiction?
Pain pills, so opioids. So for roughly 10 years, I abused opioid pain medicine 24/7 for roughly 10 years.
What led to that?
Insecurities, vulnerabilities.
Vulnerability could be a strength and a weakness?
Yeah, not getting comfortable with it is certainly a weakness. It's when you're not comfortable dealing with your emotional ups and downs, and your emotional weaknesses can lead you to look for an escape hatch from those feelings. And that's what I always tell people is the drugs, my experiences with drugs weren't necessarily, I'm going to get high because I want to feel good. I just don't want to feel the way that I feel when I'm not high. Mm-hmm. I don't want to feel insecure. And I was suffering from a fraud complex and an imposter syndrome after I started working in finance. I went from like a poor kid in the inner city of Boston, and then I was a rich guy living in London and New York, flying back and forth on the Concorde. And it's crazy as it sounds that, you know, people always say money won't make you happy. And I say that to people and they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, well, I was poor, then I was rich, and I became a drug addict. Mm-hmm. So did the money make me happier? No, it exposed weaknesses that were always there. Mm. And, you know, when you go through that, not only do you now have to deal with the same feelings that you were avoiding previously, but now you've also got to deal with this addiction problem. Mm. And it was a pain in the ass. And I think that once you go through that, you come to the realization that everyone's struggling with something in one way or another. And, you know, talking about it is the only real way out, is to deal with it. How did
the addiction start? I mean, you just said why, mm-hmm. but did you have an injury or what led to the pills initially? Yeah,
the first time I had them prescribed to me, I had an ankle injury, and a podiatrist in New York City prescribed me 7 Percocet. And then he would give me 7 every week. I kept going back saying that my foot still bothered me. And I'd take like 1 or 2 at a time for a few days. And then he'd give me the prescription, and I'd change the 7 to a 2, add a 0, take it to a mom and pop pharmacy in New York City. And from there I was off to the races. Mm. And then I was very resourceful. I was making money so I could buy them on the street. And I was a very good drug addict. Mm. I could keep myself in supply. And yeah. I was very good at hiding the addiction too. Because it would beg the question, like when I met my wife, like I was high all the time, and people would say when I was getting sober, she didn't really know. And then she came to that realization one night when I just came clean with everything. And, you know, the obvious question from people is like, how did she not know? And I was like, she only knew me high. She didn't know that there was another personality under there that I was mm-hmm. hiding.
What was the difference? Like, was there a noticeable difference between you high and you sober?
Yeah, I think so. But it wasn't like, I wasn't a complete lunatic when I was high. I was just different. I was very high and low, had a lot of energy. I'm sure the addicts out there listening to this go, oh yeah, that's something you can definitely like function with. But it was a vicious cycle. It was a horrible, horrible experience. Changed my life dramatically. But I'm better for it coming out of it. And I think that sharing the stories and being able to share the story on a platform like this is helpful to a lot of people, because the amount of people that reach out to me is staggering, that either they're going through it or they've gone through it. There was I don't want to say his name, but a very famous undefeated fighter recently reached out to me and said, I'm 1 day into detoxing. I've got to get through this. And I literally called him on the phone. I called his dad, and I told them exactly what had to be done. And they actually did it. They went through the week-long withdrawals, got to a week or 10 days sober, and then went and got a shot of Vivitrol, which is an opioid blocker that prevents you from getting high for like 3 to 4 weeks at a time. And I couldn't believe he did it. It's so hard. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And do you think that's how most of those addictions start, is like there's a real reason to use the pills, mm-hmm. and then it turns into, then you need them?
I think for people that are vulnerable, that have any kind of emotional, I don't know if weakness is the right word, but anyone who's dealing with difficulties from an emotional standpoint and get that feeling, it doesn't happen to everyone. Some people can do cocaine occasionally. Other people do it once and they're off to the races. They mm-hmm. can't live without it. It's that kind of thing.
I mean, even drinking, I guess, can be like that for some people.
Same thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I couldn't just be a normal drinker. It's either all or nothing.
That's right. And you know how some people, you can see them drinking and you're not like, he's not a raging alcoholic, but the guy's drunk every single night. Mm-hmm. Like, what defines an alcoholic?
Right.
But he's not like, there's not like red flags and, sirens going off above his head advertising his addiction. And that's how I was kind of dealing with my addiction.
You said that, you were poor, then you got rich, and then you weren't happy. Were you happy poor? I mean,
no.
When you're struggling for, I don't know, what were your struggles when you were poor?
I always say that having money and losing it is much more stressful than never having it. When you don't have it, you don't know really what you're missing. You just know that there's like there's a light at the end of the tunnel and I'm trying to get there. And when you get there and you're like, holy shit, this isn't as overwhelming as I thought it would be. Cool. I have a lot of money, but I'm still the same person.
Yeah.
I don't feel any happier. I don't feel like all my insecurities and vulnerabilities have gone away.
Right.
And I think that was the realization of like, holy shit, money is not the answer. There's only one way to deal with this, and that's to like do the hard work of coming to terms with some of the things that we go through in life.
Mm-hmm. So you grew up in Boston, and then you told me earlier a sociology degree?
Yep.
Is that what you got?
Yeah.
So how does that translate to working on Wall Street?
Well, when I went to college, I went and played football, and the guys that I was playing football with at this Division III school, Framingham State, were like, yo, take sociology. It's the easiest thing.
Yeah.
It's the easiest major. I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I had no...
It's interesting. Interesting classes. Not like fucking science.
No. I mean, in hindsight, I liked it, but it wasn't helping me get to where I wanted to go. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I wanted to play hockey, and that quickly was not going to be my reality. That I came to that quick realization, and I moved to New York, and I was working as a pharmaceutical sales rep for a few months and working out at a local gym and playing in a men's pickup hockey league. And I was seeing all these young guys working in finance at the gym, and I was like, man, how are all these kids making so much money? And they were all traders and doing different things on trading desks. And I was just like with running, I'm like, I'm going to do that. I have no idea how. And a guy I was playing hockey with, a Canadian kid, said, hey, we need a trading assistant on our desk. And they hired me. And I got fired like 3 weeks later.
Fired? Why?
Dude, this is a crazy story. They were hazing me. They were like, it was like a locker room, you know. I was like the junior guy, and they were constantly terrorizing me. And I was like, I'm not a punk. Like, why are they treating me like this? Like, I at some point I'm gonna like snap.
Like, well, how are they hazing you?
You know, they just like shit talking me. Like, dude, write that up there, you idiot. Don't write this, write that. There was a whiteboard where we'd write the prices, and the guy threw a dry erase at me, and I just slapped him. And they were like, I was ready to kill him, dude. I went crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, you're going outside, and he's like, I'm not going outside. I said, you're gonna sleep here, because when you come outside, you're like dead, man. They were like, Ken, you're fired. But much like, you know, you turning the addiction into a positive by being able to share my story, I called the young guys at Enron that I was covering. They were my client, and they told the big senior trader at Enron what happened. And that guy called me on the phone, who was the equivalent of like Gordon Gecko. I mean, he was huge trader. Like the guys that covered him made millions of dollars. And he was like, hey, I'm going to get you a job on Monday. This was on Thursday.
Tell me what covering means.
Oh, sorry. He was a trader, and we were like sales traders. So we would execute trades for him and charge a commission.
Oh, I see. Okay, and that's covering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so sales coverage. So he says, I got a job for you Monday. I was making 40 grand when I got fired. And another place calls me that day, before cell phones. This is in like 96. And the guy says, hey, so-and-so from Enron called and said, you need a job. I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you start Monday? Yeah. He's like, all right, here's the address. See you then. I'm like, well, what about pay? He's like, oh, we'll start you at 80 grand. I was like, see you Monday. Yeah. But the best part is when I got there, they were like, all right, call the guy at Enron and ask him what he wants to do today for trades. And he just gave me like a list of trades that was more business than these guys had ever done. Because they were like the bad news bears of trading. That desk was like, there's like several desks, trading desks, trying to do the same business with the same people, maybe like 3 or 4 real ones. And yeah, he started giving me all his business. And the next thing you know, like a couple weeks later, they raised my salary to 125 grand.
Whoa.
And then it just went crazy from there.
Why do you think that he gave you all those trades? Was it just how you talked to him? Did he like your personality, or what was it?
He liked the story. He liked that the guys were bullying me and I wouldn't take it. He just was like, I like this.
The guy stands up for himself.
Yeah.
And so that got you that business.
Yep.
Then that got you the 125K.
Yeah. 100. That was just the beginning. I mean, it was like several $100,000 by the end of the year, it was like huge money.
Really?
It was crazy. Went so fast.
Wow. In a year, you were making 40, got fired. And then by the end of the year, you're making what?
500,000.
Yeah. That's I don't know anything about that world. You know what I mean? I mean, we're on the West Coast.
Neither did I.
We're talking as far from here as you can get in a whole different world. I mean, Because you said you didn't even live in a house until what, 2013?
Yeah.
So you're
only
just
in apartments.
in Manhattan or, London. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a foreign life to me and this hunting redneck lifestyle I live. That's why I'm asking all these questions about these little details because fuck, I don't know shit.
No, that's cool. I haven't thought about some of them in a while, but like very quickly, then I got hired at Cantor Fitzgerald to run European and Asian commodity sales and trading. So I went over there. They rented an apartment for me. It was like, I don't know, $10,000 a week, the rent on the apartment. It was like the nicest like townhouse in Kensington, one of the nicest parts of London. I had a brand new Porsche 911. Like, it was crazy. I was a year ago, I was like barely surviving, fifth floor studio walk up. And now I live in an entire house in London.
And doing what? What was your job?
Sales trading, trading commodities, specifically electricity and natural gas.
And so what does that entail?
So they were like utilities, banks, and end users of electricity, for instance, and electricity has to flow every day. So
where I worked, Springfield Utility Board,
Yep.
we got the BPA line that runs down I-5.
Yep.
So we had a contract for this amount of money, but then also, or not this amount of power, basically.
Yeah, megawatts.
And then, so that's locked in, but then it's like extra or more or something that's not locked into that.
Yep.
And that's like a daily type thing.
That's right.
So that's what it is?
That's exactly right. So
Okay.
we would trade the next day power in the morning. So like, okay, power needs to be delivered to this grid. American Electric has power. So-and-so. The utilities wouldn't trade with us. They'd usually go through a bank. So Morgan Stanley might have 20 different utilities that they cover. And the utility might call them and say, hey, we need this. Then they'd go into the market, call me, and be like, hey, I need 50 megawatts for next day power.
And then how do you get that price?
Supply and demand. Someone has a lot and they start selling it and the sellers outnumber the buyers.
I see.
But like during the summer, if peak demand is huge and air conditioners are running, the price starts to spike. And that's when you get into like brownouts, when you can't deliver enough onto a specific grid.
I see. And so that's what you did. That was in London?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then how long did that last?
2 years.
And what happened?
Enron went bankrupt and the whole market fell apart. And that was also, I worked at Cantor Fitzgerald, which was on the top floor of the World Trade Center, and I was in London at the time. So between Enron going bust and Cantor losing their entire office on the top floor of the World Trade Center, they asked me to come back and take over the credit derivative business, which I knew nothing about. But I was
Just explain what that is to me, because again, I don't know fuck about shit.
Credit derivatives are like options on bonds. So there's stocks, and then there's stock options, and then there's corporate bonds. But there are no corporate bond options. There's derivatives of those things. Corporate default swaps. So you would buy insurance on the bond, the potential for that bond to default, which should, but in theory, be very small. But if it was a riskier bond, like a lower credit rating, the default swap protection would be higher.
I see. And so that's what you did.
I haven't thought about this in so long. Yeah, so we were trading
interesting.
that. But that was when that stuff just took off. And then during the financial crisis, that's all the stuff that blew up. So we were trading that. So
because a lot of defaults were happening?
It wasn't that a lot of defaults were happening. It was that we hit a financial crisis and all of a sudden things looked a lot more risky than they had been. So the prices for those swaps went through the roof. This is super complex. But the price then of those swaps are, you only have to put up a fraction of the money. So if the price of protection for a particular bond goes higher, you have to post margin to keep that, to show that you can pay out if that thing loses.
Right, okay.
And there were insurance companies that were selling default swaps on, I'm making it up, GE. They're never going default. I'm going to sell it for 2 basis points. That's 0.02% of the notional amount.
Right.
It's next to nothing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now the thing moves like 50 basis points against them. They've got to post all this collateral because they were like, oh, insurance never going to happen. And now it is.
Oh.
And it was chaos.
Yeah. Oh, man. So how much money were you making at that time?
Millions.
And And that lasted 2 years. And then what happened?
When you make a lot of money, you spend a lot of money. You think it's going to last forever.
Right.
I felt like a horse's ass. I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. But I worked my way through it.
So then where'd you go from there?
So when that happened, like the whole world was upended, right?
What year was this?
2008-ish.
Okay. Yeah.
Everyone who was doing what I was doing was looking for a job. And
they're all used to making a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. And those days are over in a hurry. And I was super lucky. I got an interview with Credit Agricole to trade just plain old corporate vanilla bonds, which was like more of a commoditized job. Like the pay range was well known and established. No one was making millions. And I just had to reinvent myself again. Same thing when the Enron went bust and they asked me to take over that credit derivative business. I figured it out and then worked my way up to like working at a bank and figured it out. And now I was like, damn it, right when it started to go well.
It's clicking.
And I just got married, just bought a brand new apartment and the wheels came off.
Oh, starting back over.
Oh, so stressful. And then I went to Credit Agricole and they gave me a chance and that worked out well.
How long were you there?
5 years. And then I moved to LA with started a financial technology firm with a friend of mine. I knew it was a long shot that it might not work, but I needed a change. I was I had just gotten sober and I was just like done with New York. We moved to LA, sold our house, and I met up with a guy who would change my life, a guy named Jack Macdowell from the Palisades Group. That was an asset management firm. They managed money for big institutions. And he, over the course of a year riding bikes together, I convinced him to let me run business development. And he was like, you know, you don't have any experience. This isn't a great idea. And I said, I'll do it for free. See if it works. And after a few weeks, it was obvious that it works. He gave me the chance and it was like the best thing that's ever happened to me. He was an awesome mentor. We did that for a couple of years, grew the firm from like $2 billion to $5 billion, raised 2 or 3 discretionary funds, like internal hedge funds, basically, for lack of a better term. The finance people out there are going to be like, that's not a hedge fund, but it's close enough for our purposes.
I don't know any different, so I'm not going to call bullshit.
But then Jack was like such a good guy. He's like, you're wasting your time here. You should raise money for other people, for third parties.
So go out on your own, basically. Yeah.
I never had the guts to work for myself. No health insurance. I got 4 little kids.
Yeah.
And he was like, look, I'm going to pay X amount every month for the next year just to get out of here.
Because he thought you were just wasting potential?
Yes.
Is that why?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was like, I'll pay you as a consultant when I need to raise my next fund.
Do you know how many people that would never happen? You know, somebody like that, normally they'd want to keep an asset like you working for them because they're making more money because of you. It's very rare for somebody to say, listen, I believe in you so much, you need to get the fuck out of here and do this on your own.
Yes. I mean, it was a combination of things. Yes, I would help this guy bury a dead body. This is like my best friend. This is the guy that has had the biggest impact on my career. He's the best. But I also drove him crazy because I never had good processes. I was never organized. I'm not a super intellect. No one's looking for me to explain different investments and provide analysis of investment opportunities. I just had relationships, but I always knew that.
You're a people person.
Yeah, I never tried to pretend. If they wanted to talk technical about a bond we were dealing or trading, I would simply get the analyst on the line. I'm like, we pay an analyst to do this. Why do I need to know it? I'm the salesperson. So when Jack said to me, go do this on your own, one of the first things that I worked on was with David Sinclair in Boston. We raised some money for a pharmaceutical company called Life Biosciences. He was starting, and it was successful, and we were off to the races from there. But it was super nerve-wracking because when Jack said, you're wasting your talent, go do this on your own. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was telling you why I drove him crazy.
Yeah.
My processes sucked, and this guy is super, super organized. He's got a spreadsheet for everything. Everything is on his calendar. Like, I wasn't even good using the calendar. I wouldn't put meetings on. I'd forget. he was the opposite. So he was like, it drives me crazy that your process works for you because it shouldn't work. This is not how shit gets done. This everything goes against the grain for everything. But I can't deny you've done everything I've asked you to do and then some. And he's like, I just can't believe it works. And it was, I would come and go as I pleased. Like I would, my process sucked. People were like, dude, how is this getting done? The guy's barely even in the office.
Why did it work?
I've always thought that part of being a good salesperson is being interesting. And there's nothing interesting about a guy sitting in the office all day.
Right.
So I would just explore every opportunity. I'd do all kinds of shit. Like whatever came up, hey, I'm going skiing for the next few days with a client. And people be like, this guy's always doing fun shit.
Yeah. So you were likable. People believed in you. You earned trust.
Yeah. But I also
through relationship.
But I've also always got paid on production. If I didn't do the job that needed to be done, I didn't get paid well.
Right.
So when I was in an environment where my pay was commensurate with my performance, I always did really well. But how I got there was not the prettiest picture. Like, so I wasn't a good mentor to anyone. I couldn't tell someone how to do what I do.
Yeah, right.
Because I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's like what we talked about earlier with running. I don't know. I'm just training hard. I'm just trusting that it will all pay off.
Yeah. And it's a good segue. When did the training come in? Because, for people that don't know, a lot of people probably heard of you, but you're like one of the fastest, like if you want to say masters, we try to compare ourselves with everybody, right? So we don't want to be, whatever, the smartest dumb guy.
Yeah, that's it.
But we want to be compared to whoever.
Yeah.
But fact is, you are one of the fastest masters, like say marathoners in the world.
Yeah.
When did that training come in?
When right before I moved to LA, I was doing Ironman triathlon when I got sober in 2012, 13, somewhere in that context, 2010. Because it was before we went to Ethiopia to adopt my daughter. I started riding my bike, running. Again, didn't know anything. Didn't know what I was doing. I knew how to swim if I fell off a boat, but I wasn't going to swim laps. Do you think the training was as a replacement for the drugs? Definitely.
You needed something.
Yeah.
To focus on.
Yeah, it probably still is. I don't profess to have all the answers. Matter of fact, I always tell people, don't take my advice. Don't do what I do. I'm not saying it's the healthiest thing, but this is the only alternative I have found to like doing the wrong things. This is the only thing I've found, the balance that works for me. So I was doing triathlon, did the Ironman in Hawaii 3 times.
How'd you do there?
The first time I went there was like one of the most painful experiences of my life. When I got onto the run, I was shit the bed and I just quit. I was just like, oh man, I'm not going to have a good race. I'm going to shut it down 3 miles into the run. Like I was a pro athlete or something. And that I'm so ashamed of myself. Even when I think about it now, I get choked up because I'm like, what a fucking quitter. It was the most painful lesson. That my friend Teddy Atlas talks about this all the time. It's always harder to quit. It lasts forever.
Because you got to live with it.
It lasts forever. Now I'm telling you, like I'm getting choked up. I could get emotional thinking about I fucking quit like a dirty dog loser. There was no reason.
Did you finish the race?
No. I just was like, yeah, this is too hard. I walked back to the start line. Like literally, as soon as I started walking backwards, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And my wife was there and I was like basically in tears. I was like, I can't believe I did that. What the F? I can't believe I just didn't walk. And she was like, oh, well, go back next year and fix it. And I did. Next year I went back. I did 9:39, which for me was really
pretty good.
Yeah. And then I did it one more time in 16, but I got super sick. I had pneumonia 3 weeks before and didn't train for 2 weeks. But I went there anyway. But again, I got on the run and was dying. And I just ended up walking. I finished right before the sun went down, which was a moral victory. I did like 11 hours. But yeah, after 16, I just started focusing all my efforts on running. And I would just run in the morning before work. That's where the 10 miles a day started. And I'd ride my bike maybe like 50, 100 miles Saturday and Sunday.
I see. And then you started to get fit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, were you fast to start off with when you started to do? No?
I ran I remember the first time I broke 130 and a half. Then I can remember 127, 124, 117, 114, 112, and then most recently 110. But it was a steady progression. But it came with a very predictable workload. Like, hey, here's all the work I did, and here's how the times improved. Like it was, you can see the correlation. Every single run I've ever done is on Strava, publicly available.
Yeah. Ketone IQ is my podcasting superfood. I'm no Andrew Huberman, so talking for hours actually takes a lot out of my brain power, which I feel like Ketone IQ actually helps with. Ketone IQ is a clean energy boost without caffeine or sugar. It increases your blood ketone. I'm not on a keto diet, but by taking Ketone IQ, I can achieve the desired focus and energy for explosive workouts that ketones typically provide those in ketosis. You can find Ketone IQ at your local Sprouts or online at hvmn.com and use code CAM, C-A-M, for 20% off your first order. Mud water is something I've been using daily since I started the podcast. It's supposed to be an alternative to coffee, but I actually add it to mine for some extra health benefits. It's got 4 functional mushrooms and with only a little caffeine, and each ingredient was added for a purpose. Cacao and chai for a hint of caffeine and hot chocolate like flavor. Lion's mane for focus. Cordyceps to promote natural energy. It's also Whole30 approved, 100% USDA certified organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, and kosher. Mudwater donates monthly to support psychedelic research and has since day one. They believe the country is in a mental health epidemic and that psychedelic-assisted therapy is one of the most effective tools we have to treat mental health conditions. Today, you get $20 off when you subscribe at mudwater.com/cam. You also get a free frother and a sample of their delicious coconut creamer. So go to mudwater.com/cam to get $20 off your subscription and your free frother. That's mudwater.com/cam. Today's episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep, the high-tech solution to your age-old sleeping issues. 8 Sleep's pod cover slips right over your mattress, bringing heating and cooling tech that keeps you comfortable and sleeping deeper for a better, more restful night. You would think after hammering all day, as soon as I lay my head down, I fall asleep, but it's quite the opposite. It's truly mental, and I never stop grinding, even in my sleep. To top it off, I frequently wake up hot, and when it takes you forever to fall asleep, that's the last thing you want. The Sleep 8 has hacked my sleep and kept me asleep throughout the night thanks to its thermal regulation and cooling setting. The pod cover will improve your sleep by automatically adjusting your bed's temperature based on your individual needs. The cover can be added to any bed like a fitted sheet and allows you and your partner to cool or warm your side of the bed as low as 55 degrees and up to 110 degrees. There's no better way to improve your day-to-day life than better sleep. And the easiest way to do that is with 8 Sleep's Pod 3. Start the new year right and invest in the rest you deserve with the 8 Sleep's Pod cover. Go to 8sleep.com/cam and get $200 off plus free shipping on the pod cover by 8 Sleep. So it wasn't like some big spike. It was like, no, here's a correlation between my training workload and the performance.
There were a few years where my marathon time would go from like 2:58 to 2:45 to 2:40 to 2:33. Those were big jumps. But then once I got down into like 2:33, a couple years later, I ran 2:28, and then I've run since a couple times 2:29, a few times 2:30. So I think I've like run 2:30 or better like 7 times in the last 3 years.
How can you go? I mean, how can I run 2:30?
You just got to run a lot. Run a lot with purpose. I hired a coach, Mario Fraioli, who is in Northern California, and he put together. I got to 2:33 on my own just from running a ton and not really knowing what I was doing. And then I hired Mario, and he got me from 2:33. The first race we did together, I went from 2:33 to 2:28. Yeah, it was crazy.
So fast.
Even when it was happening, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm running so fast! I can't believe this."
That's so. What's the splits on that?
5:39.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I've done a 10K at 5:42, and that hurt.
Well, the 2:28 was fast, but I felt like the half marathon I ran at 1:10 was more impressive. Like I ran 5:22 pace there over like 600 or 700 feet of elevation gain in Nashville. Like, even when that one was happening, I was like, "Holy shit, I'm on one! Like I am so strong." It was like magic.
What year was that?
I want to say 2 years ago.
Okay, man.
21 or 22.
And what's your like average workload for miles?
So right now, when I'm not in like training mode for a marathon, 10 to 12 weeks before the marathon, I'll start ramping up, and in training, I'll be at like 85 to 100 for 10 to 12 weeks. And typically I'll be 70 to 80 on a normal week, like throughout the year. So like the last 2 years in a row, I ran over 4,000 miles. And obviously it's 3,650 miles would be 10 a day.
Right. So, yeah. And then what pace are like most of those training runs at? Do you push or are you comfortable or?
If I'm not in training and I feel good, I'll run fast. If I don't feel good, then, you know, I'll typically like 7:30, 7 to 7:30 would be the normal pace.
Like today's run would be a good.
Today's run was hard, man. I was like, holy shit, this guy's in shape. It was hard. That was the hardest run I've done in a while, just because of all the climbing and the steadiness and all the change in undulations. And I just don't do that kind of climbing anymore since I left LA.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought you ran awesome. It was a great day to run in Eugene.
Oh, the weather was perfect.
Yeah.
But that hill was no joke, man. I was shocked at how hard it was. I didn't expect to run like that. You were in freaking good shape, man. There aren't a lot of people that would be able to do that run with us today, I promise.
Well, I was nervous. I was like, I was nervous to run with you just because, like, I know how good you are, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't embarrass myself.
Oh, I was worried about embarrassing myself when you were running up the hill. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna have to this is getting hard.
Yeah. I loved it though. I mean, 4 miles uphill. It's I just love. I'm not the fastest on flat. You know what I mean? But you know, running the mountains every day, just like anything, you're gonna get better at it.
Yep.
I mean, so it's just after doing it for 30 years. You should be decent, right?
You had really good technical skills on the descents. I was like, damn, I'm going to get dropped. But running downhill is dangerous. I said, if it's a race, I'll risk it all. But in training, I'll see at the bottom.
Wow, it was great. Then to end up at Hayward was sweet. But
that was cool.
So you mentioned earlier, The Rock reached out to you. I wanted to hear that story.
Yeah. It's so funny, like, as this stuff has kind of gained more attention, it's interesting to see in your friends groups, like who leans into the friendship and who kind of distances themselves. I have some friends that have become like uber famous, and I hear from them less. But then I get a message from someone like The Rock, and I'm like, you know, it's like, it can hurt your feelings when you're like, oh man, I never hear from so-and-so anymore. It's like too big for me. Like, I feel like it's all about me. You don't think about, put yourself in their shoes of like, oh, they must be super busy with things. So one day I noticed that The Rock was following me on Instagram, and I'm like, that can't be the real Rock. I mean, it's like, and I look 400 million followers or something. I'm like, holy shit. So I sent him a DM. I said, hey, thanks for following, man. I loved your interview on Joe Rogan show.
Yeah.
And he immediately hit me back with a voice memo like, hey, brother, Rock, I hope he doesn't even mind me sharing this. You know, just I mean it as a compliment, but I never posted the voice memo or anything. I wouldn't share that. But it was like, yo, it's The Rock. What's up? Love your content. I get super inspired when I go on your page, and I'm going to go run through a brick wall now and hit the gym.
Yeah.
You inspired me. And I'm like, I was speechless. I was like, show, get the kids down here. It was like the proudest dad moment because my kids watch all those movies, Jumanji. They like, my kids one time said to me, I forget who I told them that I met. Well, my Jelly Roll is really close with my friend, with my kids. Like, so they know some like uber famous people, but I was like, get the kids down here. Guess who left me a message? And they're like, who? And then my daughter's like, The Rock. And I'm like, yes. And she was like, you could see her face just like light up. She was like, The Rock knows my dad.
That's great.
It was like my proudest dad moment.
I mean, one of the most famous people in the world, really, The Rock.
And I've spoken to him a few times because when I was in LA with Jelly Roll, we were all going to get together for dinner, and then his kids got sick, and we didn't end up having it. But he was like, "I'll hit you when I get to Nashville the next time." But it was just unbelievable that he would even think to call. I was like,
I wonder how he came across you. Do you know?
I have no idea. He said he saw my content on Instagram and went on my page and then liked it and followed me. Yeah. And he follows less than 1,000 people last time I checked. So it's not like he's out there just like following people like crazy.
Surfing, looking for people to follow. That's pretty cool.
But it's cool that he recognizes that he has a platform that's big enough that And then he's like commented on a few posts, which obviously then they light up, right?
Oh,
Everyone's
yeah.
like, holy shit, dude, The Rock commented on your post.
Yeah.
And of course, then I'm like, he did?
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I wonder if, because I know he's a fight fan, I wonder, you know, you mentioned the podcast with Teddy.
Yeah.
How'd that start? And what's going on there?
Yeah. My friend Rob Moore, who's like one of my closest allies in the world, him and I were in LA coincidentally at the same time. He was doing PR and he was leaving his job at Edelman, a big PR, you know, corporate gig. And I was leaving the Palisades group and going to do my own thing right at the same time. And I had introduced Rob to some fighters in LA, specifically Mike Lee, who was a super middleweight world champion. And he actually fought Caleb Plant, who's also from Nashville at one point. And that was his first loss. But I said to Rob, you should do PR for Mike and come up with a different structure instead of charging like a huge upfront fee, like a retainer that PR usually charges. Mm-hmm. I said, charge him like a small retainer and a performance fee. And long story short, he did it. And then through Mike Lee, Teddy got connected with Rob got connected with Teddy. And Teddy had been slowly being pushed out at ESPN because he was always talking about telling the truth about boxing and pointing out like different bad decisions, bad judging. And the promoter who was working with ESPN, I think, didn't like it. And they were basically using Teddy much less on ESPN. And Rob was like a huge advocate of podcasts way back in the days. Like, these podcasts are the future. That's why I call Rob the Podfather. And Rob got connected with Teddy and was helping him with some management and PR stuff and said, why don't you start your own podcast? You don't need anyone else's platform. You can build your own. Mm-hmm. And then through that, he connected me with Teddy and said, do you want to do this with Teddy Atlas? I was like, yeah. I go, does he want to do it with me?
Yeah.
And I was just a fight fan. So on the podcast, I kind of represent the fans' point of view. Like, you know, no one's tuning in to hear my analysis of a fight, right? I just set the fight up. Hey, here's what I saw. Looked like this guy was like, you know, on the gas all night. He did this, did that. What'd you think? That's what people really want to know. And then he'll break down the fight and we'll go back and forth.
Yeah, that's interesting because that is a perfect perspective because most fight fans don't know what the fuck they're looking at.
No, of course not.
You know, so it does take an expert to break it down.
Oh, it really does. Because a lot of times I'll be like, oh man, it looked like this guy, it was a bad decision. He's like, no, it was the right decision a lot of the times. And then he'll explain, here's what's happened. And then from a fan's perspective, I'll ask the question that I think fans want to hear.
How many robberies are there in boxing?
Dirtiest sport on earth.
Yeah.
Most corrupt sport ever known to man.
Is that always going to be the case?
Until Teddy's pushing, or we're pushing for a national commission to have someone oversee it like they do every other sport in the world. You know, it's just so many different factions within the sport. There's different governing bodies. There's different sanctioning bodies, different belts, different sanctioning fees. You know, if you want to be ranked by the WBC, WBA, WBO, like you've got to pay them fees. If you're the champ, they get a percentage, X% of the fight purse. It's crazy.
Yeah. What does Teddy think about like the YouTubers boxing, like Jake Paul and Logan Paul fighting Floyd? And
Teddy's like, when it comes to that kind of stuff, he's the most rational person in the world. He's like, listen, if they take it seriously, at the end of the day, this is like entertainment. And he's like, you know, he likes the Pauls. We had Jake Paul on the podcast. He's a nice guy. That was another one where my kids were like, Dad, you're talking to Jake Paul? I was telling Jake, I asked my kids, would they rather throw a passes with Tom Brady or talk to Jake Paul on the podcast? And they chose you. So I go, I'd be doing a disservice as a dad if I didn't let them come in here. Guys, come on, quick. So they came onto the podcast and they were literally just standing there like starstruck. Like, I go, guys, don't freeze up on me now. Come on. What do you want to say? Hi.
Was Jake pretty good?
Yeah, he was
on the
cool.
podcast.
They're very cool. He's a humble, cool guy. He's playing a role. He's playing a character. And at the end of the day, it's entertainment. Half the people buy the fight to see him win. The other half buy to see him lose, but they're all buying.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of Colby's philosophy too.
That's right. That's old Muhammad Ali quote. Half the people come to see me lose, half the people come to see me win, but they're all buying a ticket. Yeah.
I mean, Colby's might be 95.5, 95% wanting to see him lose, but they're all watching.
The thing about Colby, I give him credit for being able to stay in that character for a long time and shame on the simpletons who can't see that that's a character, that he's playing a role like as if it's wrestling, but with real fighting. And I can appreciate it. I mean, look, sometimes, I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? But when you realize, like Chael Sonnen, he's playing a role. He's never lost a fight. Yeah. Everything's a robbery.
Yeah, I know. He's never lost a round.
No.
Chael.
Oh, Chael's the best. But Chael is like a mentor to Colby. So I give them, but Chael's been on the show before, and I said, dude, credit for being able to stay in that character. It's hard to be disliked. And he's like, I'm glad you said that, because you're right, it is hard at times.
Yeah.
And but no, I like them. I appreciate everyone's like station in life. Like, we're all trying to do the best we can. So I think it's so easy to cast dispersions on other people and be like, fuck this guy's an asshole, this guy's an idiot. But if you take a step back and take a deep breath, calm down, and recognize we're all trying to do the same thing. Most people are good people. Most people just want the best for themselves and their families. Obviously, there's some bad people out there, but you know, sometimes you got to take things with a grain of salt and like give people a break. And listen, I'm not perfect. I can be harsh on others as well. But at the end of the day, if and when you can take a step back, you realize we're all in this together. Even with this divisive bullshit going on with the election, like, we're all from the same country.
Right.
Shit goes down. It's like being in a neighborhood where you're fighting with the neighborhood kids. But if kids from another neighborhood come over here, guys, it's go time. We're all in this together. Let's go. Get your hockey sticks. Get your bats. They're coming.
I wish. I mean, that is the mindset. I wish everybody understood that.
No, I know.
You know, because it's like we do kind of this tribe mentality, and I think it hurts us for sure.
Well, the key is do the best thing that you can, which is control yourself. Speak the truth. Don't go along with the bullshit narrative because it's convenient. Tell the truth.
Right.
There's a lot of truths that aren't spoken right now because people are afraid to get labeled one side or the other, and it's crazy. Like, we don't have to agree on everything, but we can still respect each other. I agree to disagree on a lot of things with my wife.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I understand that. I do. You know, in regard to the Paul brothers too, what I appreciate is how hard they fucking train.
They train.
Those kids train, and they're athletes. Yeah. You know, it's not like they're just some YouTube, maybe they were YouTube stars, but they're not, nobody stays the same.
That's it.
I mean, you're not the same as you were. Now
I don't even recognize myself.
Yeah. I mean, so can we acknowledge that these kids work their asses off and have made a bunch of money?
Oh, I love it. I love watching those fights. I tune into every single one. Actually, I went to when Jake Paul fought who was the UFC fighter he fought?
Tyron
Woodley. Yeah. The first one, I went there with Dustin Poirier in Cleveland. And dude, talk about chaos. We were sitting in like, I don't know, 4th or 5th row. There was literally no security there. So Dustin comes in, the crowd goes mental. But there's no one like to tell people to get to their seats. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden there's like a swarm of people, like to the point where I'm like, dude, this is getting dangerous. Like someone's gonna fall down and get stampeded. And then they came out and they said to Dustin, the management people were like, hey, Dustin, Tyron wants to see you in the locker room. And he's like, oh, Ken, come on. And they were like, no, just you, Dustin. He's like, yeah, forget it then. We're not coming. He's like, okay, Ken can come too. I'm like, I'm like the 52-year-old little brother.
Yeah. Was that before the fight?
Yeah. So we went in both locker rooms before the fight. It was just a huge job. I'm a super fan, man. At the end of the day, I love this shit.
Dude.
But I'll tell you, my youngest son is a jiu-jitsu fighter and wrestles. He's 8, and he's good. And I don't know if Teddy or someone mentioned to Dana that he's into it. So I saw Dana at the Nashville show, and we were sitting cage side. I don't even know how we got into the VIP section, but I was chit-chatting with Dana, and he's like, yo, I heard your son is really into this. Like, oh, he's convinced he's going to fight in the UFC. He's like, you want to bring him next week to Boston? I was like, hell yes. He's 8. He's never been to anything like this. Dude, I can't even, again, I could get emotional thinking about this. Dana connect with my PR person, call this person. And I know them from booking guests with them, their PR rep. And they're like, yeah, you're all set. You got tickets. And Dana said, come sit with me at the fights. So I'm like, okay, maybe we just, I've seen him give decent seats to people. Yeah. And I've seen him have people sitting on the cage, like literally touching it. So we get there. Me and my son fly up Saturday morning. He's got a Celtics jersey on. And when we bought the Celtics jersey, I said, buddy, you want Jason Tatum, who do you want? He's like, I don't really want anyone else's name on it. Can I get my own name on the shirt? So he's got his own name on the shirt. He's got a leprechaun hat. He's got his Air Jordan Celtics colors on, and he's on top of the world. Where it was magical to me because I've done cool stuff like this, but to be there with my little boy, it was like, man, the whole thing was so emotional. So we get there, they walk us, we check into the VIP, we walk in with Peter Welch, who owns a boxing gym in Boston, and he recognizes me. I've never met him, but he watches the show. And, it's always, you know how it is when someone recognizes you, like, you know who I am?
Yeah.
Oh my God, inside I'm like, oh my God, this is great. So people are saying hello, and Micky Ward's there, who I know from we work together, and they're getting a lot of attention. My son's seeing these people that appear to be famous coming to talk to me. Yeah. And at one point he says to me, Dad, like he's telling me a secret, Dad, I think you're famous. I was like, I go, no, buddy. I just know some of these people. So anyway, they walk us out to the seats. We're in the front row. Like we're arm's length from Rogan in the crew, so Rogan comes over.
That's where Trump usually sits.
Yes.
Like if he's sitting in Kid Rock.
We're 6 rows in front of the Celtics coach.
Oh man!
And it gets better. I mean, and of course, anytime I go to a boxing or a UFC card, I'm the first person in the door. I want to see every single fight. I love it all. So we're sitting there. He's in the VIP. He's eating candies. We keep going to the restaurant. He's getting cake, and I'm just like, have whatever you want.
Right.
So in between the main and the co-main, Dana comes over and goes, Cameron, come with me. Ken, give me your phone. Open it. Like I hand him my phone with the camera on. He takes my son, brings him over to Bruce Buffer. Buffer's holding his hand up, pointing at him like this. I'll show you the pictures after. Takes him over to Rogan in DC while they're doing the broadcast, has them turn around and take a picture with him. I'm not there, thank God, because I would have been like, no, don't interrupt. So then he goes, Cameron, come here, get up there, get in the octagon. And Cameron's looking at me, I'm like, get in there. So he comes out and he says to Dana, hey, Dana, next time you see me in that octagon, I'm not going to have my shoes on. And I was like, oh my God.
He's going to be a fighter.
We might have one. We might have one.
He's got the right mindset for it.
Yeah. So after all that, my son looks at me, he goes, Dad, what about Missoula, the Celtics coach? He loves the Celtics. Yeah. And I go, hey, Dana, can you introduce him to Missoula? He's like, oh yeah, Joe, get down there. Practically puts the guy in a headlock. He's like, take a picture with the kid. And Joe Missoula couldn't have been nicer. It was one of the best nights of my life.
That's incredible too, because it's like, no matter what we've had for blessings or opportunities, we've been around for 50 some years, right? So yeah, it feels good. It's been a long grind, but to be able to share special things like that with your kids, that they could build on that. They're young. Yeah. So who knows how that's going to affect the trajectory of his life, you know? Yeah. And so when we get those opportunities to expose our kids to this other lifestyle or world, you don't know what kind of effect that's going to have. That's what's powerful to me.
That's exactly right. When I was a kid, I didn't have an example of or access to athletes to be like, that's a reality for a lot of people. Like, that guy is doing it. That's another person. Like, you can do that. Mm-hmm. That person did it.
I didn't have that either.
You can do it. But even with the stuff I've done with running, it's that they can see, your kids can see, like, what's achievable if you just follow your own passion and believe in yourself. I didn't have a goal of being recognized as a runner. It seems crazy that it's even happening. Mm-hmm. It was just something I was doing. It's like you were hunting, and all of a sudden people are like, damn, this guy's a good hunter. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you kind of adapt to the new role of being like, I don't even know if you call yourself a celebrity hunter, but it's like, you're probably the most famous bow hunter. I don't know anything about hunting, but when someone talks about bow hunting, they mention your name. Mm-hmm. And that's crazy, right? Because it's kind of, obviously not to the same extent, but it's been like that with running, where it's like, most of the people have been super supportive, but I see some people in the running community, I feel like they don't like welcome me there because I don't look like a traditional runner. I didn't take the running path of like running in high school and college. Mm-hmm. So it's been an eye-opening experience. But like I said, it's an example to my children. Like, you can have anything you want. Yeah. It doesn't have to be. One of my oldest son's into video editing, and he's like, for a long time, he loved Dude Perfect. Now he's outgrown it. He's going to kill me for even mentioning it. But I'm like, dude, figure out what your thing is. It doesn't have to be trick shots. It could be making videos about sneakers. He loves sneakers because I love sneakers. So he's like, I'm going to make something about sneakers. I said, if you make really good videos, I'll buy you those Apple goggle things. I said, I'll get you whatever you want.
Yeah.
I always tell my kids, you know what you can have in this house if you do all the right things? Anything you want. And they're like, what about a trip to Disney? I said, I'll tell you what, if everyone gets straight A's and we don't have any BS and no one has fighting with each other or something, we'll go to Disney. And you know, the next day the two of the kids will be in a fist fight and I'll be like, that's why you're not going to Disney. We need some consistency.
Remind me, speaking of shoes, remind me before I take you back that you need some Speedland size 10.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So remind me of that. I don't want to forget. But yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. And I, too, when I've been at the fights, you probably felt like, how am I right here, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that when and I'm also a super fan, so I get everything you just said about being the first one in.
Yeah.
I live for those fights, but I'm always sitting right there going, Dana's going to come over here and say, what are you doing up here? Get back, get up there, right? Because it's like, there's no way this is going to last.
That's right.
And it keeps
exactly how
lasting.
I feel.
Yeah. And it's like, I definitely don't feel like I belong there. But
that's the beauty of it, right? Is that I recognize that like kind of kindred spirit is that it's so appreciated. Like the people that were sitting next to me, two female influencers sat right next to us. They came for the main event. I was so angry.
Yeah.
And they were like, I was like, oh, what do you guys do? They're like, social media. And I'm like, what do you mean social media? The girl goes, hot chicks on social media, hot chicks on Instagram. And then I looked her up right in front of her. I'm like, 12 million followers.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
that's why
qualifies.
They're there. Well, and yeah, so the cameras are on them.
Yeah.
They add like a little bit of, beauty to the fight.
You know what's crazy?
It's everything.
We were right in front of the Nelk boys, like all Dana's buddies from Happy Dad, and they sponsor O'Malley.
Right.
When O'Malley won, I'm not exaggerating here. It was like a tidal wave of booze flying up in the air and people coming over the seats behind us. Like, I'm not shitting you. I grabbed the camera by the back of his basketball jersey and his t-shirt with one hand and ripped him out of there as people, like all the chairs and everything collapsed into front of us. Like security, as it was happening in slow motion, I see security scrambling. And as I'm ripping him out of there, the people, they're like grabbing me out. They're like, whew, that was a great dad moment too. You saved them. They were about to, they went crazy.
They were mad?
No, they were so happy.
Oh, happy, yeah.
Bear went flying. They come flying over the top and all the chairs collapsed and they were like, and they all just stormed the edge of the cage. It was momentarily scary. And then I was like, all right, Cam, you had enough? He's like, yeah, I'm ready.
Was that his last fight against Aldo? Or not Aldo. Aljo. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. No, when he won the belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. That was, I mean, he does have some super fans, but being sponsored by the Nelk Boys.
But he jumped over the cage, started drinking a Happy Dad seltzer. It was wild. I got crazy videos on my phone.
No, those guys they're balling too. Oh, they're making so much money.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
But you love to, I like seeing that stuff, but I know it irks some people because they want that. And I get it. I get that you want that, but you shouldn't have ill will towards someone else for like, if nothing else, paving the way. They're showing you what you can do. Like,
yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah. How could those kids do it and you can't?
That's it.
You know what I mean?
That's it. To be honest with you, I'd only in the last year even know who they were.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, but I got to hand it to Dana for being kind of a visionary on, because he's kicked out some like MMA media, figures have been there for years.
Yep.
They're not in there, but these social media kids are, because that's how they're marketing UFC now.
You're exactly right. He's a visionary. He recognizes that the next group of fans are younger kids, and who's in touch with those younger kids? These Nelk boys are like the Pied Piper of this next crop of fans.
Or even the girls sitting there. They were there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but that's just to elevate the UFC brand in a different audience.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty impressive how he's built UFC to what it is.
It's unbelievable, and I love that he's non-apologetic about everything. He's like, this is what it is. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Makes no apologies. Lives his truth. Everyone should celebrate that, but I feel like there's a faction of society that doesn't like that kind of masculinity.
Right.
And it's like, dude, you clearly don't like that because you're threatened by strong men, regardless of their race or orientation. It's just like people are just out there making it happen.
Yeah.
The company was worth $4 million to $2 million, whatever it was. Now it's $4 billion. Now it's like $9 billion with the IPO they did with TKO.
Incredible.
And now that they've joined forces with the WWE under William Morris Endeavor, what Ari Emanuel's like purchased them both, rolled them into one, and then did an IPO, TKO of the two sports, the two franchises basically, is masterful. And then you see Chandler cut a promo at the WWE.
I know.
It's masterful, like marketing.
Yeah, they've definitely got the blueprint for how it should be done at that level. I mean, not many businesses are at that level to be that creative or whatever, but they are, and they're killing it.
I love seeing it. And Dana is Dana, and I think of Dana and Joe Rogan as very similar guys. They're like, they'll do anything for their friends, and they're like never lose sight of like where they came from or who they are. Yeah. And a funny story, Joe, I met Joe when David Sinclair did his podcast, and then I went to Vegas for work on one weekend when there was a UFC show. And I was texting with Joe, and he got me tickets, and then I met him for lunch, but I was away from my wife.
How did you text with Joe? How'd that come up?
Also, when I went to his studio with Rob Moore, who was representing David Sinclair, who made the introduction for David Sinclair to get on Joe Rogan's podcast the first time, we went to the studio, and I met Joe. And then we just kind of were somewhat friendly. I wouldn't say we like hit it off or we were best boys. We were just, we were friendly. And he had said once, maybe hit me if you come into a UFC show. So I was in Vegas doing work by myself. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in Vegas. I would love to come to the UFC. And then I met him and Ian Edwards for lunch one day. That's so embarrassing. I was there by myself, and in a moment of weakness, got high during the day. It was like probably the last time I ever took pain pills. And I don't even know if he would know, but I was like, after the fact, I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. He probably thinks I'm a spaz, like just hyped up. And I've never even told him that. So if he's listening, he can, sorry if I seemed crazy. But I think the first step to like addressing and dealing with your issues is acknowledging them. And, you know, if I made anyone uncomfortable in my, whacked out stupor, my apologies.
Yeah.
But he may not even have known. He may have just been like, what a fucking weird guy.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess we'll find out if he listens. Joe
I've seen him a few times since. He's always super friendly to me.
Really?
Oh, dude, he couldn't be nicer.
Yeah.
I saw him when I was with my son. I saw him at the once in Vegas. I went to his show with Dave Chappelle with my friend Ben Anderson, who was a war correspondent at Vice, and he's buddies with Chappelle. So we were in the green room and went backstage and saw Joe back there and just exchanged pleasantries. But
yeah, I'm sure, you know, hey, not everybody's perfect. You know what I mean? Or nobody's perfect. So we've all had our ups and downs. I'm sure he just writes it off as what maybe probably didn't even notice. But
I probably didn't, but I noticed. And when I do, I feel like it's important to acknowledge and accept your responsibility.
I understand. Yeah. Our subconscious or our thoughts of ourselves are usually worse than everybody else's, for sure.
That's right. I tell people that too, when people get nervous about events, or like we were talking about earlier, nervous about coming on a podcast. Our imagination is so much more creative than reality. There's no limit to what you can imagine that could go wrong.
Right.
But the reality is, no, you've been here before. You've done this before. Like, you know who you are. People are going to know who you are. Like, unless you're dropping some crazy ass bomb on people. Like, it is what it is. What's the worst they could say? Is that guy's boring or that guy's full of shit? Like, of all the things that people have said about me in the past, that's not even scratching the surface of things that offend me.
What I always say is I've been called worse by better.
Yes.
So it's like, until you get like maybe somebody, I don't know, that you really respect saying something about you, it's probably gonna be okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, in regard, what about UFC judging? Because we mentioned boxing judging and being that sport being corrupt. Did you watch the last UFC card?
Yeah.
Did you watch Mackenzie Dern?
Yes. I don't remember that one being.
Because people are saying she got robbed. She got hurt. I know that.
I think that anytime you have discretion like gymnastics, figure skating,
Yeah.
you're going to have some people's interpretation just differ. The problem is when you have like someone who you think clearly won and the judge says they lost every round.
Yeah.
And they lost 30-27. You're like, dude, what?
Right.
Occasionally. But I also almost wonder, technically, I think the sanctioning body, the state athletic commissions, assign the judges. I don't think the organization has anything to do with it because I've seen Dana be frustrated by the judging. I almost wonder if sometimes the judges feel like they want to give the decision that the promoter wants to see because ultimately they want to keep working. And I think sometimes they get it wrong, but I think that in the UFC, it's far, far less prominent than it is in boxing. Boxing is blatant. Like, if you don't do what we need done, you'll never work with us again. While they might not be able to assign judges, the promoters can certainly DK judges and referees.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theories about, like, the stars. If it's not a knockout, the stars are going to win.
Yeah.
You know.
In boxing?
Or even in UFC.
Well, I feel like in the UFC, there's like everyone has a legitimate chance. The lines, the odds are typically like, I mean, if you have someone who's a 3-1 favorite on the main card, that's extreme.
Yeah.
In boxing, it's very rare that the guy's not like a 5 to 10 to 1 favorite in most of the main events. 90%. Once in a blue moon, you'll get like Fury and Usyk, where you're like, oh shit, this is the one. Or Bivol better Biev. And you're like, okay, this is what the fans want. But both guys know they're undefeated. Like, they've got to be paid a lot. That's why having the Saudi Turkey Al Sheikh come in and have a blank checkbook, he can put on all these fights. So he looks like the hero, but a promoter has to make money. They have to guarantee the fighters a purse, and they have to go and recoup it. That's why Dana describes it perfectly. It's like every boxing show is promoted like a going out of business sale. Everything is, what's the shittiest that what's the worst we can get away with without looking completely crazy?
Right.
And then you go to the UFC and you're like, there's fucking spaceships in there and light shows that like haven't even been made available to any other venue. It's madness. It's so, the thing flows. It's like, I don't want to sound like I'm just blowing smoke up Dana's ass, but when someone's doing something great, it's like,
it's an amazing production how they have that orchestrated.
He's the Cam Hanes of hunting. He's the promoter version of fighting.
Yeah,
you and Dana,
right? Yeah, I got a lot of respect for that business he's built. But so, what are your thoughts on Fury and Ngannou on that fight?
Oh, I think that Fury clearly won the fight, but I don't think, myself included, anyone expected to see Ngannou knock him down and be around for the whole fight. Like, that was as good as a win as you're going to get from me. And that's not a knock. I love Francis. I know him very well. And his manager is Markel Martin, is a super, super kind person and a good guy. And actually, he got a lot of hate from Dana. He got a lot of hate. He used to work at the UFC.
Francis?
No, well, Francis and his manager.
Yeah.
And that's their beef. But I would tell you, I like Markel Martin. I like Dana, but Markel is a nice guy in my opinion. They have their differences. That's between them. But Francis and Markel showed a lot of conviction in Francis's ability to make money. They did everything they said they were going to do, and now they can write their own ticket. And I think Francis Ngannou would be the most, if you give that guy 2 or 3 hours to tell his story, because that's how long it takes, because I've heard it, it is fucking insane.
From where he came from to where he's at.
It is insane.
Yeah.
I think he tried to get from, I want to say, Morocco into international waters off Spain and rescued by the Red Cross probably like 7 times. Dude, he doesn't know how to swim. Can you imagine getting into a rough sea in a rubber raft made out of tire inner tubes with like 7 to 10 other African immigrants trying to get out of there? He said at one point when they made their last attempt, they were down trying to get into the water on a rocky outcropping, and the waves are crashing down. And one of the immigrants that was trying to get over, one of the African guys, an older guy, was panicking and didn't want to get on the boat. And Francis said, I picked up the board and I told him, get in that fucking boat. And the guy got in and they got out and the Red Cross got them. But even then he went to a detention center in Spain. Then he got to go to France and lived in a parking garage for like however long, sleeping in the stairwell and boxing and training, boxing initially and then into MMA. But a wild story and just a super nice guy.
Crazy. I mean, and you know, you hear stories like that, and then you hear people complaining about life here in our country, and you're like,
man.
you're like, wow, what are you talking about? Because that is just a story of, I mean, not only survival, but doing whatever it takes to chase it, not even chase a dream, just live a comfortable life.
Just to like get out of the sand mines. He was working in a sand mine. Like, I don't know if they were mining for gold or what, but like incredibly hard work.
Yeah. And now to be able to make, did he make 30 million on that fight?
I don't know what the number was, but I'm sure it was at least that.
Yeah. And he got criticized heavily for that decision.
Yeah.
To leave as a UFC champion, you know, drop the bag. That was pretty a famous line. But you know, so nobody really gave him a chance to do what he did in boxing.
I thought he was going to get blown right out of the ring.
Did you?
Oh, I thought.
I think most people
blasted.
did.
You know,
because Fury's so good
and big.
and
you know
huge.
how hard it is to sit in the pocket like that and stand right in front of a guy who's chucking punches at you like that and to be smooth in the pocket. I think that's the hardest thing about boxing that a lot of people who haven't boxed don't understand. To stand right in front of someone in punching distance with your hands up, bobbing and weaving and throwing punches and dodging the punches coming back at you and never taking your eyes off them. Go and stand in front of someone clowning around. I guarantee you, your first instinct when they throw punches is to look down and cover your head.
Yeah.
If you take your eyes off the opponent, you're going to sleep.
Right.
So to be able to keep looking at him while you're getting cracked with good shots it takes conviction and confidence and incredible athleticism. So to see him do what he did was just, man, it was like such watching someone's dreams come true. Yeah,
it was incredible. I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
because that was the goal the whole time, is to get that big paycheck. Yeah, I don't know. What an incredible story. But to your point also, that when you said to stand there and not like cover up or whatever, it makes me think there was a McGregor fight. It might have been Eddie Alvarez, where Alvarez threw a punch and I think it just barely hit McGregor's nose and then didn't blink, didn't do anything, came right back probably with his left.
Yep.
And I mean, just that distance management and just knowing and then not flinching, like when a punch coming at you and to not flinch, take your eye off the target and then react.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I think slipping punches in the pocket is the hardest thing about boxing, to be able to sit there and they're throwing punches at you and you're just moving your head like a fraction of an inch left and right, slipping to the sides of the punches as they're grazing off your face is crazy. Because if you miscalculate that, you're getting hit right in the mush by someone who can crack.
Who's the best you've seen? I mean, Mayweather was obviously a great defensive fighter, but I've seen Canelo with that head movement pretty impressive. I mean, who do you think? You follow boxing.
I think that Terrence Crawford is the best pure boxer in the sport. He can change lefty, right, southpaw, orthodox, just back and forth, and be just as good either way. He's been on our podcast before too, and he's like talked about training to be able to fight from both positions, and his trainer telling him, don't do that anymore, when he was in the amateurs, and he just started knocking guys out from both stances, and it was like, all right, just do what you want to do. But Teddy would always say that Terrence Crawford does things that most people can't do. He like makes it up as he's going. Sometimes it doesn't even look like he's doing things that he's never really trained. It's like he's so instinctive. He's like a great musician, just like making up the notes as he goes, how Teddy would describe it. And I think Canelo's great too, but I think that Terrence Crawford is the best pound for pound boxer. I don't think anyone's as good. He's destroyed everybody. And then when they said he was going to have a tough fight with Errol Spence, I mean, he almost killed him. It was
Is he undefeated?
A vicious beating.
Or has he lost?
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
He's won like multiple divisions. You can check me on maybe 4 different weight divisions.
How old is he now?
I want to say he's like in his mid to late 30s. I don't think he has a lot of prime years left. The thing is, I think that when you have fighters like that, like Roy Jones, Terrence Crawford, when they're so good and rely so much on athleticism, they get old overnight. The minute you lose that fast twitch, that reaction time, like you saw it happen in real time with Roy Jones. Once he got knocked out, it was over. He got knocked out multiple times. And they time just catches up to them. They're so fast. They're so good. There's, I'm trying to think who was like that in like Frankie Edgar in the UFC. He was so good. And then once as he started to age and lost that like quick reaction, I mean, he's still unbelievable, but the last knockout that he suffered was just vicious.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has a lot to do with aging and that athleticism that comes that elite athletes have that fast twitch, and that's like the first thing to go with aging. That's just my opinion. I hope I haven't offended him.
No,
I like Frankie. He's a nice guy.
Oh, I mean, I got so much respect for anybody who gets that octagon.
Oh my God, that's a crazy sport.
As fans, of course, we're going to have opinions. And yeah, sometimes we don't know what the hell we're talking about. You probably do, just because you've been around the sport or combat sports for so long. But you know whose career has changed on a dime, not really from a punch, but from a kick, is Kamaru Usman's.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that's a perfect example.
I mean, he was, on top of the world. He was talking about boxing Canelo.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Well, he's the golden goose. Everybody wants to box him.
Yeah. It's so much money. But I mean, at that time, it's like he was talking about multiple weight divisions, boxing Canelo, and then took that head kick from Leon.
And he was never
hasn't
the
won
same.
since.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah, dude, it happens. When Izzy lost to Sean Strickland, I'm like, dude, no one can beat this guy. When he beat Alex Pereira and avenged that loss, I'm like, dude, he's on another level. And then the performance against Strickland, unless something was wrong with him, it was not a good performance whatsoever. I'm happy for Sean Strickland, but I love Izzy. He's been on the show a couple of times, and he's a really nice guy. But talking about those sports can be difficult because so many of the guys, like, you get to know them and you like them. It's like twofold. It's like, I hate to see any of them lose, the ones that you start to know and like. And you're friends with some of these guys. But seeing your friends lose is terribly difficult. And then being honest, and if you have to be critical while still being respectful, it's hard. I always am sensitive to not try to offend anyone, but tell the truth. Like, yeah, he got smashed, or so-and-so, it doesn't look good for him going forward. And it's like, you hate to say it, but it's the truth. It's a fine line.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, it's, every time when Colby fights and I'm there, I'm freaking a nervous wreck.
Exactly.
I want that belt to come back to Oregon so bad. And I thought that Leon was just going to be I thought it was a perfect matchup because Colby's so wrestling heavy, just one of the best wrestlers. Leon, that's not really his game. He's a striker.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, it's going to happen. So it was like, it hurt that he lost that fight. It hurt me.
Yep.
I can't imagine what the fighters are, that's their whole life.
I know exactly what you mean.
It's, oh man, what a heart. It can be heartbreaking. It can be life-changing. It can be the most incredible sport, but man, brutal.
Yep.
Brutal sometimes.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, a different subject, is, as I've got more and more competitive in the running and had the benefit of working with some really great brands, and it's been incredible. How was the experience for you, to kind of come up the way you came up? You're working for the city, and now all of a sudden you've got gym companies building custom weights for you, and your own kind of apparel line. Was there a first deal that you did that you were like, holy shit, this guy wants to align their brand with me? Do you remember if there was one? And do you still get that feeling when people want to do things like this, build you a custom weight set? Because it's awesome in here.
Yeah, thank you. No, I expect it to all go away. I mean, I just like getting kicked out of the UFC, why are you up here? I expect all this to go away, and somebody will be like, get back to your shitty life that you deserve, because you don't deserve this. And I'd be like, you're right. You got me. So that's what I expect. So yeah, the first, I remember I signed with the camo company. I think it was Realtree, and they make a camo pattern. And I think the deal was 5 years, $125,000. So $25,000 a year. And to me, I was like, this is insane.
I would have done it for the clothes.
Yeah, I would have done it for nothing.
Yeah.
It's and so to say I had a 6-figure contract, right?
Yeah.
And even though it was over 5 years, that seemed unreal.
Yeah.
And it still seems unreal. So all this, it just doesn't seem it doesn't feel like this is a life I should have.
It's funny because the reason I asked it, as I was listening to your book, I listen to everything while I run. I read so much of what you said resonates with me about anyone can do what I've done and genuinely believe it, and it's not bullshit. It's why couldn't they? feel special or unique, but I think, at least in your case, I think that's what makes you so appealing to the everyman. It's like, he's one of us. He's just like, because that's how most people would feel. And the truth is, yeah, he's like one of us because he is. Just like all of them. And that's the same thing with The Rock. I think that that's been one of the eye-opening things that's happened to me as I've had the pleasure of meeting some of these super famous people like Jelly Roll, The Rock, and Joe Rogan. It's like, we're all the same. Like I said earlier, everyone's the same. You're just trying to do the best with the circumstances that you're dealt with, that you're in, good or bad. And like I said, with the money, sometimes when things are going well, that doesn't necessarily lead to happiness. The only way to get happy is to have peace with yourself. And that comes, you don't have to win races. You don't have to have endorsement deals to get that feeling. And that's what I tried to stress to people when they ask me about, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? I'm like, that is not the answer. The answer is within you. It's being comfortable with who you are on a day-to-day basis. But trying to convince people of that is very difficult. And I don't know, for whatever reason, when I was listening to your book, I felt like, Jesus, this is like, guys, I feel like he's reading my mind. Like, a lot of the stuff was hitting home with me.
Wow, that's amazing. I think part of it is, I'm not a fighter like you, but we've had to fight for everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And been kicked in the dick, knocked down from addictions. I had issues drinking. And it's like, once you go through all these ups and downs, maybe shitty, whatever, childhood, maybe whatever, disappointment, relationships, addictions, and then you still won, that's where people form a connection, and maybe it's from afar, maybe it's just from a book, but it's just like, God, that reminds me of my journey, And so I think we've just had to fight to get here.
That's a good point, and I'm in the process now of writing a book myself, and it's been very therapeutic at times, thinking about things that I haven't thought about in a while, and I realize I haven't thought about them because they're painful. But the only way to get through that pain is to go through it and deal with it. And in that regard, it's been incredibly helpful for me. And like you said, when people reach out and are like, I'm going through the same thing, or they identify with it, it keeps me motivated. It's what keeps me like going. Even not that I need motivation. You know how it is. It's like motivated. This is just what I do every day. I wouldn't even know what to do without it. But it is incredibly rewarding, and I'm excited to see what the reaction is to the book. But I'm also overwhelmed with anxiety and insecurities about sharing more of my story. Although,
so it'll be a life story.
Yeah, more or less.
What's the title going to be?
I've been going back and forth with the agents, but I'm not sure. One of the things that I've been like kind of toying with is calling it 51% mindset, but I don't want it to sound like too salesy, but I think of things in these terms a lot. Like, I only need to convince myself by an extra 1% that I can do something, or that I'm going to do something. It's like the race that I did in Mongolia. I did this race across the Gobi Desert back in June. I was so scared and nervous to do this race, and like 49% of me was like, what in the hell are you doing? And it was like, I couldn't sleep. I was overwhelmed, but there was 1% of me that was like, I'm registering, I'm doing it. I was going back and forth, but that extra 1% got me to say yes. And literally, as I walked onto the jetway in Nashville to start the journey through Atlanta to Seoul to Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, as I walked on the jetway, I literally was almost said to myself, like, we're going to fucking kill these guys. I'm coming to kill people, like, not really kill people. I love everyone. I want to be friends with everyone, but I want to win. This is not like, I'm going to go on an adventure. No, people after were like, dude, was it fun? How was the scenery? I'm like, I was like pushing myself to the brink of death. It was not fun. It was work. Like, that's how I think about it. And trying to explain that even to my wife, it's like, 90% of the time is spent struggling in the effort of trying, failing, constantly pushing. And then you get like 10% or 9% of it is like kind of joyous that you realize you're going to win. And that 1% is like, yes, I did it. I won. And the next day you're like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
That moment of elation is so fleeting, but it's like drugs. It's what keeps you coming back for more. But it's almost like, I didn't choose to do the race. It almost like, without sounding corny, it almost like chose me. A friend of mine said, hey, I'm doing this race. And for whatever reason, the kid was the president of Equinox, Scott DeRue. And I said, dude, I bet I can win that race. And he was like, have you ever done an ultra? No. Have you ever run with a pack? No. Have you ever camped? Nothing.
So
No
why would you
experience.
think you could win it?
Because in my mind, I'm like, holy shit, you got to run 25 miles every day, and one day is 50 miles for a week. And I was like, well, I can't imagine that anyone's trained more than me for the last 2 years, short of like Olympic or professional runners. And I don't think they're going to be there. And I was like, I said to my wife, I'm like, am I crazy? Should I do this? And she's like, well, you always talk about doing things outside of your comfort zone, and the only growth comes, started quoting all my cliche shit. She's like, the only growth comes from being
Those are
uncomfortable.
just words.
I said, you're right. I'm doing it. And the funny thing is, I was like, she was like, yeah, go ahead, do it. You can go there for a week. But then she was like, how much will it cost? I'm like, oh, it's not even that bad, few grand. She's like, oh, okay. I go, but the flight is super expensive. And she's like, nah, we'll take the kids to Hawaii before we do that. And luckily, thank God, I had a few brands that I've worked with, like Athletic Brewing, Athletic Greens, Roan, and HVMN. They came through and they all helped me out and offset some of the costs. And it's funny because the guy at Athletic Brewing, when I came back, he was like, dude, I can't believe you won. And part of me was like, what do you mean you can't believe it? I told you. I said, I told you I was going to win. He's like, do you know how many people call us and tell us they're going to do things and never, ever do it? Don't even come close.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I can't even imagine. I would have died trying. I would have come back like injured. Or I would have been like, okay, I came in third, but I'm getting them next year.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think people say they're going to do these crazy things. I think it's a small set of people that say they're going to win. You know, I mean, like for a lot of people in that race, they're probably like, they're going to finish it.
Yeah, most of them.
To have the mindset, I'm going to win this, and say that, that's what people are too afraid to put their goals out there usually.
That's right.
And including when that goal is I'm going to win, that's like most people avoid that because then you look like you failed when you don't win.
Yes.
Or you're embarrassed that you.
And I would have been all those things.
Right.
That's why I said it.
But that's what sets you apart.
Right. And you.
Well,
Out there telling people, hey, here's what I'm doing. This is it. I don't say it like at all from a point of arrogance. I say it from a point of accountability. Like, yo, I think I can win this race. Why do you think you can win? I think I can win the Boston Marathon until someone proves me wrong. I mean, it's almost foreign to me to like not think that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for the competitive runner, I think that the only difference is a lot of people don't say that out loud. But for me, saying it out loud is not, I would never want it to be misconstrued as arrogance. I'm saying it because I do believe, part of me does believe that. And by saying it, I'm creating accountability and pressure for myself that I need to keep working. So like, I'm gonna run, but maybe I'll run without my backpack today. You ain't gonna get a day off without that pack in the fucking desert in Mongolia. So I'd put 21 pounds of water bottles and towels in this backpack in June in Nashville. The whole bag and the towels would all be soaked with sweat after like 10 to 20 miles. It was so, I mean, after the first day, I was like, holy shit, what have I done?
First day of what, training or the race?
Training with the backpack.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, I'm not even going to finish. My heart rate was through the effing roof. I mean,
Really?
oh, dude, the same effort level that I would put out to run like 7:15 a mile for 10 miles, I was putting out the same, like the perceived effort and running like 8:30, 9-minute miles and dying. And it was just a different, it's a different feel when you have that weight on you. It's like different exertion on your body. So everything was sore after I'd run.
Yeah.
And I was like, but by saying I thought I could win and asking these brands to work with me,
Yeah.
dude, you know how it is. I was telling to my wife, I'm like, I've created pressure like a professional athlete. These brands I got out, they're going to live and die with my success. Like I cannot go there and not empty the tank. Like I have to either win or come back dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what that attitude reminds me of? A lot of Brady. Brady, he wasn't just like going to show up and have a good season.
That's right.
It was win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so he made it to 10, won 7, but he was not afraid. I mean, I've heard stories about him, talking about the offseason. Edelman, I think, shared this on his podcast that Brady'd be looking at, a date in January or February, whenever the Super Bowl is, and Edelman would be like, "What's this date about?" And he's like, "That's the day of the Super Bowl." And it's like, what? So that mindset reminds me of, hey, you want to win? That better be your goal. You just don't win by accident.
It has to be. You're not going to go there with a goal of being competitive and accidentally win.
Right.
Like,
because when the going gets tough, you're going to be like, if I'm in the top 3, I'm still okay.
100%.
Yeah.
That's when I think of Brady, I also think of guys like Aaron Rodgers. Like, I love the way that guy gets after it. When they tore his Achilles and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to try and get it back by the end of the season." You're like, dude, you have a torn Achilles. Like, see you in 8 and 9 months, whatever. And he's like, to see him back out there hiking the other day with Robert Kennedy. And I just like guys that speak their mind, and it's not popular, and it's not easy to put out a dissenting view.
Right.
And I respect everyone's opinion, but I love when someone isn't afraid to speak their mind and speak against the, widely accepted narrative. And that's not to take a social position on anything. It's just to say, I appreciate and respect people that speak their mind. And, we're going to vilify the guy because he doesn't agree with us. Like, what the fuck? What are we talking about? What is going on here? Yeah. So I know he's a big fan of the podcast here, so I hope he's listening and keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah. I love Aaron Rodgers. I love Tom Brady. I love Edelman, too. I mean, Edelman was a freaking warrior.
Dude, I was at the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue party in New York with my friend Neve Schulman, who is the host of Catfish on MTV, and he was on Dancing Star. Super nice guy. He's a big runner.
Yeah.
And he was connected with someone, and he was like, "Come to this party with me." Actually, Sports Illustrated is owned by Authentic Brands Group, and they own Reebok and Brooks Brothers, and those guys have been incredibly good to me. I've been working with Reebok for the last 2 years, and so shout out Authentic Brands Group. But we went to this party, and Edelman was there, and I don't know if he recognized me or Neve told him that I did the show, but he's like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And I was like, dude, my kids are huge, huge fans. When we throw passes, they're like, "Dad, I'm Edelman. Hit me on the thing." He goes, "Give me your phone right now. I've got a video." He's like, "Hey, Rideout boys, this is Julian Edelman. I heard you Boston guys are like looking for trouble." But he called them all by name. He's like, "Hey, Jack, Luke, Cameron, I see you guys." I sent it to them. They were like, my wife was like, they are losing their mind.
That is
now
awesome.
They don't have their own phones. We have like some floater phones that they can take when needed, because we don't let them use social media, obviously. Right. And she was like, "Oh, they all want to take the family phone to school to show all their friends their video message from Edelman." But that's what I mean. Same thing with like Rock and Edelman. These guys, like, you know what an impact it makes for a little kid like that. Even Dana, like, bring your son. He wasn't like, "Ken, you come to the UFC." He's like, "Bring your son."
Yeah.
And it just makes such a difference on the kids.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, it could change the trajectory of their life.
100%.
I mean, because they have this dream, and the dream seems real when they've watched it or met these people or had these people speak their name even.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So then you're like, I can't let this person down or whatever. I mean, it's the weird things that we can trick ourselves with. I did want to say, did you see that? I think it was some Edelman documentary about how hard his dad trained him.
Yeah.
I would love that. I love that. Because I've often felt bad.
That can go bad.
I've felt bad about how hard I pushed my boys before. Yep. And so I've seen, and I know it can go bad, but it seems like it worked out for Edelman.
Yeah. No, look, here's a perfect example. I have 3 sons. They are so wildly different. The little one, like I said, he trains jiu-jitsu at least 3 nights a week. And for a while during wrestling season, he'd go to wrestling 2 nights a week. So 2 nights a week, he'd train for like 90 minutes at wrestling and an hour in jiu-jitsu, back to back. They started 10 minutes apart. So sometimes when he comes home and he's like, "Dad, I don't want to train," it's like, I wouldn't never say this to the other kids, because they don't have something that is like almost like their calling. It's not their thing. They play basketball. They play all sports. But they don't have like the passion that he has, but it's hard to keep him on point. And then I'm like, dude, I can't force this kid to go to jiu-jitsu. Like, I can't make him go. And some days it's like a fight. And then I'm like, all right, fine, don't go. And then my wife steps in and is the voice of reason and talks to him for 2 minutes and he's ready to go. She's like, you just got to talk to him the right way.
Yeah.
But inevitably, he'll come out of there. It's like I always tell people, no one goes for a hard run or a workout and then regrets it.
No.
Every single time he comes out of jiu-jitsu, every time when he didn't want to go, and he's like, Dad, I'm glad I went.
Yeah.
Did really good.
Yeah.
And but my middle son is, I don't know where he gets it, but he's obsessed with outdoors, like all the man skills that I don't have, fishing, hunting. I don't know where it comes from. We got him a bow and arrow for what's it called?
Recurve.
A recurve.
Yeah.
For Christmas. I've never shot it with him because I don't even know how to like put the string on it. But he's like, Dad, when are we gonna do the shoot the bow? But now I'm going home to show him my new bow and train him up. But he's gonna. I know what's gonna happen in the next couple of years. Once he gets good, I'm gonna be calling you and being like, the friend that put you in the awkward position of being like, please take me hunting with my 15-year-old son.
Yeah.
He's like, he's dying to do it. He he fishes at the little ponds in our neighborhood by himself.
Really?
I went down there a couple of times with him. It's so embarrassing. I caught a fish. I'm like, dude, I got one. Get it off the hook. He's like, Dad, grab it. I'm like, I'm not touching it. You do it. I'm such a baby.
Oh, it's no, you're not a baby. You just haven't grown up around it.
No, I don't know
because
anything.
walking around Boston would be a lot harder than touching a fish. So,
Oh, hell yeah. It's different.
Surviving in Boston. I'm curious. So what's your goal with the book? Is it to inspire people? What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question.
Yeah,
One that the agent says in the proposal, here's what you need to do. I think it's to, I don't want to say inspire and sound like a corny, like it's a self-help book, but I want to give people an example and with my own actions of what's possible when, like you would say, when an average guy just doesn't want to settle on mediocrity. When you decide that you're not going to settle for being average, it's amazing what you can do. And it's all a very simple formula. The person who works the most typically is the best. The guy who has the big muscles in the gym, he probably lift weights a lot more than you do.
Right.
The guy who's winning the running race, he's training more. And as soon as I came to grips with that concept and just started training, it became like both my therapy, maybe my replacement addiction. And, maybe that's my advantage, but I don't care. I like the life I have now a lot more than the addicted loser life that I was living. Lying to everyone, including myself, about when I'm going to get sober, lying to my wife, lying to my friends. I was disgraceful. So maybe this is my penance that I'm like, you don't get any days off. You fucking used all your free passes up. But I think that the book, I'm hoping that it can, inspire and and provide some motivation to someone who's, even if you can help a small handful of people that are going through addiction to say like, yo, when you're in it, that doesn't seem like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's like what we were talking about on the run. The reason people that are fit and good athletes, runners, good physiques, the reason that's such an awesome flex is because the commitment, the sacrifice, and the delayed gratification that they had to deal with to get there. That doesn't happen overnight. And when you're going through recovery, that first week of like detoxing and withdrawing from the drugs is hell on earth. I mean, imagine being the sickest you've ever been and it won't go away. And it's not going to go away for 10 days. And you can end it at any minute by being like, let me just take a couple just to like, this is the big lie all addicts tell us. I'm just going to wean myself off. I'll just take a couple. 2 days later, you're back to full blown taking pills every single day, 3 or 4 times a day. I'd take them in the morning, I'd take them at lunch, and I'd take them after dinner to chill. And I'd justify every single one of them. And what I'm hoping that some people realize is, I promise you go into that dark tunnel of recovery. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's like training. You might not see it for a little while, but you have to fucking blindly believe that it's at the end of the tunnel. You just have to keep going.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the book it's not just a book about addiction. It's just about my own personal journey and some of the things that I've dealt with. And as much about recovery, it's about turning weaknesses into strengths. We cannot control what happens to us. We can only control our reaction. Okay, that sounds cliche and corny. Fuck this guy. I get it. But let me tell you, when I slapped that guy in the face for thank God it was only a few hours where I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to move back to Boston. I have no money. I barely made enough money to pay my bills in New York. I had student loans. I turned that into a huge strength. It became like a calling card. Like the clients that I had as a result, they loved that part of my personality. The addiction, most humiliating thing that's ever happened to me. I've now turned that story into like a building block to say, look, look what's possible. I did this. I'm demonstrating to people, like, you can do this. I was telling you earlier, I think that when you see someone who's gone through the recovery or withdrawal process that I've gone through, it's like seeing someone who's like extremely overweight, and then you see them a year later and they look like The Rock. And you're like, dude, what the hell? That's how I feel. That's how I view people that have gone through real addiction, like a heroin, crack, that like hard drug addiction, like daily use. It's so hard to do. It's so hard. Your brain chemistry is altered forever.
Right.
And that's the part that I struggle with now, is knowing that I'm not the same person I was, and I used to like myself more than I do at times now, but I can't ever go back there. So it's no sense in like fretting over, like Jelly Roll said when he won the CMA, like the windshield's bigger than the rear view mirror for a reason. It's like, it's important that you recognize what happened, why it happened, but it's much more important to focus on what's in front of you. You can't change anything, but you can change what happens tomorrow. And again, the reason that these fucking corny or cliche sayings stick around is because they're true.
Right.
Tomorrow, that can be just one day, or that can be day one of the new journey.
Right.
And there's nothing to stop you. Like, you can have everything. Because there are people out there that are watching things like I'm doing, but more so what you're doing. And I'm saying, you can do everything he's done. There's no like superpower there. Okay, you're obviously a good hunter, but like that's a learned skill. Someone could acquire that. Maybe not to your extent, to the extent you have, but I mean, Joe Rogan didn't know how to bow hunt when he started. He's shooting elk. I mean, there's people out there that are demonstrating what's possible. So it doesn't have to be running. It doesn't have to be hunting. But if you're seeing this and there's something you want to do, this should serve as motivation that, to use your words, we have two very average guys that have just decided, like, I don't like being average. I don't. It sucked. I felt like I wanted to be recognized as being like, successful, something. I wanted to have traits that people admired, and there was only one way to get them, to go through the fire. Right. And it's available to anyone. The gate's open. Come on in.
Yeah, it's for me and for you, it seems like the answer to that, what do I do to be undeniable, essentially, is work every day.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in 3 days. I don't know what's going to happen in 2 days, but I know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to run that fucking mountain.
and the weather.
I guarantee you that.
And the weather does not matter to me.
It doesn't. And it's like, you see people all the time like, oh, what do you do for legs? Or, oh, you're on PEDs because you got this and that. I'm like, just fucking run a mountain every day, dude. I mean, what are you doing? Until you do this for decades, then, I guess you can't really say shit. That's exactly
what I say. It's like for people to cast aspersions without being in the fight themselves. I'm like, if you were doing this kind of work and it wasn't working for you, then I'd say like, okay, well, let's look at why. But there's no one else that's doing this workload and not having success, because anyone else putting in this kind of work is having success, and they're way too busy to like shit talk and hate on the people that are achieving their goals. There's no one successful out there telling their friends like, dude, look at all the people I trolled today.
No.
Right?
I know. It's they might tell their other loser buddy about it, and they would like it. But I was going to ask, I don't think we talked about this, is you worked at, was it the prison or jail?
It was a prison.
Prison.
Well, the prison has a section that's a prison, and then they also have a jail as well. For people who don't know, jail is where people are being held waiting trial. Like you could technically get bailed out of jail if you have bail. I mean, obviously, if you've killed someone on camera, you might get no bail. Although no bail seems to be like few and far between these days. You could chop someone's head off on
they want to let
TV,
everybody out,
and they'll give you bail. Well, you got to think about it this way. We're all innocent until someone proves us guilty. Yeah. So the reason that their bail exists is because I haven't been proven guilty of a crime. So why should I sit in jail for the next year? Dude, jail is no joke. Jail and prison are two different things, and jail is terrible. You have you have very few rights. You got one dude who's on $1,000 bail for drunk driving, and another guy who killed 75 people, and they're all in the same facility waiting trial. So to get no bail. But there's also instances where you know this guy is on camera killing someone, like he shouldn't have bail. Like, sorry, your bail is revoked.
But they're all together.
That's right. And then the prison is people serving sentences. And in the prison, then there's different levels of the prison. There's like a maximum security, what you would call a maximum security, and then there's like some modular units and work release. And one time this is just a funny side story. I was working at so I worked full time in the summer while I was in college with a bunch of college buddies, because the union guys there, like the other guards, they all want to take vacation in the summer, so they hire summer help. Yeah. But they gave you like 4 hours of like classroom training, which was in hindsight a joke. Again, it was like kind of like the trading desk. It was more like hazing. It was like I trusted the inmates more than half the guards. Seriously.
Yeah.
So I'm working there one day, and you get assigned different posts every time you work, more or less. I mean, some old timers would have the same, like, okay, you're at the guard shack down in the parking lot. You never see inmates. It's like the easiest job, and you see just the visitors. And other guys are in like, okay, you're in the isolation cell. You're in the ball field. Guess what's going to happen in the ball field in the summer? People are going to fight.
Yeah, assault.
And dude, when there's a fight, all the doors close. If you're out in the ball field and there's 200 inmates and 2 guards,
that's not good.
You better hope they don't have a problem with you, because they will beat the shit out of you. This is like not like Shawshank. This is more like Oz.
Oh God.
Dude. One time an inmate said to me, if you didn't have that badge on, I'd punch you right in your face. I was like, oh yeah, motherfucker. I went to put my hands on the badge, take it off. He punched me right in the face. Dude, no questions asked.
Then what happened?
Oh, then the other guards came and they bundled him. And you take them down to isolation and give them a beating, typical stuff. But still, I was like, I'd rather not have a punch in the face.
Exactly.
So I get assigned to work release, and one of the benefits of being in work release is you get to go like kind of off campus to like AA meetings. You're starting to get more and more freedoms as you're like segueing to like release date.
Right.
They're almost there. So typically the guys don't F around.
They're in good behavior because they're almost out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But they're still idiots a lot of the times. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And there's undercover security that works for the sheriff's department in the prison. They kind of like float around. They'll go to these different meetings. They're undercover.
Yeah.
So one of them
listen for shit going on.
Yeah, and they'll sit in on the meeting just to make sure the inmates, when they're not being supervised, aren't doing anything crazy, because they're crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the detective comes up to me as I'm standing outside with this like 10-passenger big giant van, and it's just me, and I probably look like I'm 13. I'm 18, but I look really young, and I'm in a full like police uniform, and I'm standing next to the van. The guy goes, "Hey, so and so, like Tyrone Jenkins was drinking. Stop at the main building. We're gonna take him out of work release and bring him back to the main maximum security prison. He's screwed." So I'm like, okay, no problem. I don't care. It is what it is. I'm driving. And, prison is super segregated. So the black guys are sitting in one section of the van. White guys are sitting in the other. And there's a white kid sitting next to me in the front seat. Because it's like, it would be like your substitute teacher at a high school full of fresh kids, like punks. So, but some of them are cool. You're like, hey, what's up, man? Oh, cool. What, you mind if I put on the radio? No, go ahead. So we're driving. And I see them the black guys all congregating, like 4 or 5 of them. And I'm like, oh man, what's going on? I come to a red light in Cambridge, like, so kind of in the inner city, and we're going out to Billerica, like suburb where the jail is, the prison. And the dude jumps for the side door, opens the door, and jumps out of the van. Like, I don't have a weapon. They're not in jumpsuits. They're not in stripes like a movie. So he jumps out. So as he does, I turn to grab him and kind of fall out of the driver's seat and start to get him. And the passenger, who's like kind of my buddy, like I see him every day, he instinctively goes to help me.
Yeah.
And then quickly realizes, like, oh my God, what am I doing? They'll kill me.
Yeah.
So he jumps back, and now the van is rolling out into traffic in like a major intersection in like kind of downtown of a city. So he jumps in the driver's seat, puts it in park, and now I'm scrambling to my feet, and the guy's we're both standing in the street, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Get back in there. And
you're 18?
Yeah. And I'm like a kid about to get in trouble. I go, dude, what are you doing? The guy's right behind us. Get in the van. We're both gonna get in trouble. He goes, no, I'm jetting, man. They caught me drinking. I'm gonna catch another case.
Yeah.
I said, dude, you got 3 seconds to get in this van, or I'm driving out of here without you. He got back in the fucking van. Dude, the whole way back to the prison, these guys teased him mercilessly. They were like, oh, the worst escape attempt in history.
Oh, no.
And then I was like, as we pulled up, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to write a report with all this bullshit. It's
Oh,
like,
my
it was like
God.
the day before Christmas.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, brother, Merry Christmas. Good luck.
Pretend like it never happened.
Yeah. And he was like, all right. And then of course, the other inmates were like, Ken's the best. Ken for mayor.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a good depiction of what kind of everyday life was like there. It was like 1 minute someone's punching you in the face. The next minute guy's like, hey, you want some of these ramen noodles? I just made a whole batch.
Yeah. Sounds like a shit show most of the time. But what I was going to ask is like, I mean, here, if you work at the jail and corrections, it's not a bad job. I mean, they're making, maybe $70,000 a year. You're going to work, whatever. Like, was that a good job back there or a terrible job?
Like what you're describing, yeah, it's a good job. I don't want to disparage anyone, but I'm telling you, that was the worst job I've ever had. And I was a roofer, a landscaper. I did every friggin' job under the sun. It's like you're an inmate. You have to spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in a prison. And there's nothing nice happening there.
Right.
It's only risk. You don't get paid a lot of money for what you're doing. And it's a sad reflection of society.
Yeah. Because,
look, some of the guys are cool. They got caught doing stupid things. But to get sentenced to jail, you have to make a lot of mistakes.
Right.
OJ killed 2 people and didn't go to jail. Like, if you have money in defense, you can pretty much get away with a lot of crimes. So by the time you get convicted of enough crimes that you are actually doing time,
yeah, you're a fuck up.
No one there is going to be like, I'm innocent. But of course, there are guys there that were wrongly convicted. The worst case was there was a guy there who was convicted of molesting a bunch of kids at a daycare and was later proven to be innocent. Can you imagine? Dude,
terrible.
This guy was terrorized.
I bet.
And he was a normal, nice guy. Like,
he didn't do it.
He was proven innocent and let out of jail. Like, dude, his mother and his sister, they ran a daycare. They were adults. His name was Jerry Amaral. There's a documentary about it. And I'm not saying he did or he didn't do it. I don't know, but I believe his conviction was overturned. He's out of jail. But dude, that guy was treated like a convicted pedophile. You know what that life is like in prison, dude?
Probably terrible.
I don't even know how he didn't kill himself. It was, everybody.
How long was he in?
He probably did 20 years.
Oh my God, 20 years.
Dude, imagine. Everybody hates you. The guards, the inmates. No, you're a child, you're a rapist. The things that he was accused of doing were so heinous that you were like, anyone with a half a brain would listen to the charges and listen to the description and be like, there's no way that someone could have done this in front of all these kids and no one else saw this. It was insanity. But it was like a modern day witch hunt when you think about when you look during the documentary, they explain how the trial went and the testimony. And listen, if someone out there knows the case and is involved and doesn't agree with me, I'm not trying to be offensive but looking at the case objectively, it's hard to think that this guy was guilty of these crimes. And I actually knew him like really well because I'd see him every day for like years. And he was always super kind, super friendly, like, hey, what's up, man? Had no problem talking about the case and being like, yeah, it's bullshit. I didn't do it. But a lot of people believed that he didn't do it.
Yeah. Wow.
Crazy.
I couldn't imagine.
But then you'd be talking to him, and then a few minutes later, I'd be walking around the ball field with a guy who was convicted of murder for hire, a convicted hitman. Convicted. You got to have a lot of evidence against you to be convicted.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, that's I don't know. So there was no probably like decision like, oh, I shouldn't quit this job. It's a good job. Maybe I could just make a career of this at that time.
That job was my motivation to move to New York and realize I've got to start studying. I've got to get out of here. I've already taken sociology. I can't change my major. I'm just going to get that. Maybe I'll get a master's degree after, but I cannot do this. Because when I first got the job before I started, I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to have this civil service job. The best is great benefits.
Yeah.
Like somehow benefits are like this unattainable, like golden goose of benefits. I'm like, dude, you got benefits? I'm like, you realize you can buy them. Like you can pay for anything you want. Okay, they're expensive, but it's not worth, you're not going to sacrifice your career because something had a good benefit package.
Yeah.
Like that's
why a lot of people, like where I used to work, a lot of people would say we had good benefits, which we did.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was different.
And that is great.
Yeah.
But it's not a reason to pick a career path.
Yeah.
I
understand.
That's like settling, unless that's a job that speaks to you and you want to do that. And that's great. I'm with it.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, nah, I don't want this. I don't want this life. But it was, that place was so interesting, changed my life in so many ways, including having these crazy stories to tell. But I worked there with Micky Ward, who they made the movie The Fighter about. And his brother, Dicky Eklund, who was played by Christian Bale, he was in the jail while Micky and I worked there together. Micky only worked there for like 2 years, but
How old was he then?
he's probably a few years older than me. So if I was 18, he was like 23. He'd work there, and then on the weekends and at night, he would drive a steamroller on the highway, paving company. Oh yeah.
And
so
then when would he train?
Anytime he could. The guy was unbelievable. But, you know, and then he had that fight with Arturo, the first fight with Arturo Gotti, where I saw the fight was on HBO. I'm like, oh my God, they're putting Micky in with Arturo Gotti. He's going to get killed. Because Micky was good, but he was like, you know, no offense, like a club fighter. He wasn't. And he won. And it changed his whole life. They had a trilogy. They made millions of dollars. He's built a career from that. And he's like, couldn't be a nicer person. Micky Ward is like the salt of the earth.
How's he doing now?
Good.
Yeah.
Does his thing. He's got an apparel line like Micky Ward Boxing. He's got a boxing gym in Boston. You know, he's doing his thing, living in Lowell, Mass.
Oh man, that's where he was like in the movie. I remember,
That's
right?
exactly right.
Yeah. So no like CTE type stuff. Because I mean, he was in some wars.
Probably does. I think he had a detached retina. He's like, you know, but that's like one of those things where it's like, I don't know, is that his real personality, or is he affected from fighting? He's just a jovial, cool guy, though.
Yeah. Well, I guess it could be worse, right?
He's one of those guys, like when I was growing up, where he just was super comfortable moving in that chaos. And it's like, for me, the chaos of my childhood and growing up the way I grew up was like kryptonite. I was an anxious, uncomfortable mess. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I had sports. And as a young kid, I was a really good athlete. And through high school and college, the other kids just caught up and just got better than me. Some kids were just destined to be good. We all did the same things, worked just as hard. It wasn't a work ethic thing. It's just like at a certain level, you're like tapped out. And I never was comfortable in my surroundings. I didn't like where I lived. I didn't like living with my family. Everyone was, you know, my brother would end up being an inmate in that prison. My stepfather was an inmate in the prison before I worked there. And right when I went to start my either freshman or sophomore year, he gets out of prison, and my mother and my stepfather sit me down and they're like, hey, you know, so-and-so's got a new job. He's gotten out, you know, he's out now. He's got a job. Okay, yeah, cool.
Your stepfather?
Cool. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, wait, we just want to tell you, he got a job. He's going to be a janitor. I'm like, all right, cool. Good luck with it. And he's like, yeah, at your high school. I was literally like, can you guys just kill me? Whack me in the head with a hammer. Like, why are you doing this to me? And they were like, how dare you be so selfish? You know, and it was, dude, it was.
Was it as bad as you thought, or?
In hindsight now, it wasn't, you know, it's, I don't know, how bad is it? Occasionally someone would be like, is that your dad? And I'm like, no, that's not my dad. Like, thank God my dad would come around to like my sporting events, so most of my friends knew
your
who my
real
dad.
dad?
Yeah. But I lived with my mom and my stepdad. But yeah, it was like, I was like, of all the like cruel things that they did to me over the years, that was the coup de grace. I was so bummed.
I bet.
Now I can look at it and laugh, but there was nothing to laugh about at the time.
Now it's a good part of your book.
Oh yeah.
You know?
The trauma and the addiction.
Oh man. Yeah, it's I mean, your story is what did Dicky Eklund, was it drugs?
Dicky. Oh, why was he in? He was on, they made a documentary about Dicky that was HBO made a documentary about him, and they told him it was going to basically be about his comeback. And really, it was called High on Crack Street, and it was about when crack just came out, and they were filming him smoking
They showed that, didn't they show, like, there's a clip of something about when he was in the movie in prison watching it.
And it was going to come out, and they're like, guys, my documentary's coming out, and they're all sitting in the
about him knocking down Sugar Ray Leonard?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Did.
Yeah.
But they were talking about his comeback. But they were making a documentary about addiction and crack, the crack epidemic. And recorded him smoking crack, jumping out of windows. And when it came out, he was devastated. But he's a cool, fun guy now. Like, he's just a jovial dude, super funny. He's always rolling around with another buddy of mine called Mike Lee. They call him Bean Shooter, the most famous bank robber in Boston. He did time for like accessory to a murder, bank robbery, and he was a hardcore heroin addict. And actually, he's a funny follow on Instagram. I think it's Bean Shooter 69. He's got huge following, but he always gets banned for posting insane stuff. But now he's sober. He runs a sober house and he has a roofing company. But dude, this guy is funny, and it's funny now because people who know him and don't know me, they're like, dude, Bean Shooter follows you. I'm like, dude, Bean Shooter's my dude. He's my friend. But not Bean Shooter, the famous bank robber, just Bean Shooter, the sober guy.
Yeah.
But he's still crazy. Like but he's hilarious on Instagram.
Yeah.
I mean, it's super offensive. So some people might see it and be like, how dare you think this is funny? So footnote that it's not for everyone.
There's a disclaimer.
100%. I always tell him, like, dude, you got to tone this stuff down. You're not going to get any endorsement deals. And, obviously he laughs. It's like, he's not the kind of guy
that's not the goal.
He's not getting endorsement deals.
Yeah.
But, man, that was that time in my life, that my childhood was, in hindsight, traumatizing. When you're in it, you're just like, dude, this is what everyone's dealing with. We all have our baggage, right? But when I went to, last year, I went to a place called On-Site Workshops. It's called a trauma healing center, but I wasn't looking at it like, oh my God, I've been traumatized. I better go fix myself. I was just like, dude, I got through this addiction, but I'm not as happy as I should be. And like, I'm struggling with a lot of things. I'm struggling in my relationship with my wife. At times, I'm not the best dad, but I want to be. And I think that's another thing about when you talk about vulnerabilities, is like, if you're not going to fix yourself, like, how can you help other people if you can't even help yourself? And I know that I wasn't living the quality of life I wanted from an emotional standpoint. So I went to this like 5-day retreat. The crazy thing is, when I was talking to Lance Armstrong in his podcast, he's like, oh, I've been to On-Site 3 times. The amount of people, when I talk, I guarantee you people will hear this and be like, dude, I've been to On-Site. It's a big commitment, but it's life-changing. It's the most important thing I've ever done for myself. And when I went there, you're in intensive one-on-one therapy, like 5-6 hours a day for 4 days, just one-on-one. Then you do some group stuff, which I wasn't as into, but it is helpful, kind of like an AA setting, but it's different. And the woman was like, tell me about your childhood, and we're talking. It's a normal conversation. It's not like you're, being hypnotized or some bullshit. So we're talking, and I'm like, well, I didn't really have trauma per se in my childhood. I mean, it sucked, but everyone's childhood sucked. And she's like, not necessarily. She's like, would your kids say that their childhood sucks? I'm like, are you crazy? My kids have the best life. So she's laughing and with telling stories and using all these visuals, and I'm going through different transitions in my life, and I'm telling her about things that happened that were like traumatic in hindsight, and she's putting it all up on the wall. I'm going to try not to get choked up talking about it. It was so traumatizing. And she was like, what if I told you any of this shit happened to your kids? I was like, I failed. If my kids experience any one of those things, I have failed. I am a loser. And she's like, why are you special? And your kids can't, you can handle it, but they can't. Do you think that you're different in some way? And it made me realize, like, we all want to think we're different, but at the end of the day, no one is different. No one's unique. We have unique characteristics, but we're still people. We'll still process pain. We just deal with it differently. And it was a huge eye-opener for me. And that was, I think, something that's been massively transformational for me in my life, and certainly helping me share these stories now so openly, and then eventually writing about them in my book. But like I said, that's part of the therapeutic process of like letting go of this shit and acknowledging it and dealing with it.
And that's been night and day difference since you've done that?
For me, night and day.
Yeah, because most people from the outside in would look at your life and look at all you have and all you've earned, and what you have, you've earned, obviously, and say, what do you mean you have the perfect life? Why would you be unhappy? Well, you can't just forget everything you were through in those formative years as a kid and how you felt. You might block it out.
Yep.
But you don't forget it. And it still impacts you.
The way that I was treated, and the way that some incidents, some of the things that happened to me, get processed. And then when I see my kids, you know, misbehaving or dealing with a situation, the way that I parent them, you can't help but to, in a lot of ways, repeat certain cycles, even though you're not consciously doing it. It's like you only know one way to deal with that, the way it was dealt with you. I've never hit my kids. I mean, when they were little, they might have got a spanking here and there, but not like I got hit.
Right, punched.
They might have been hit with a belt like multiple times a week, if not daily. It was crazy. But even then, I was like, everyone gets this shit. Everyone gets raised like this, you know, and the people doing it will justify like, oh, these kids need... Motherfucker, no one needs to be physically hurt to prove a point.
Yeah.
You have to be more creative. And I'm not suggesting like parent the way you want, but to think that whacking a kid around is the way to get him to comply. How's that working out? No one's been beaten into compliance. It's like the beatings will continue until everyone complies.
Well, I've seen till the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? But, you know, you think about, when I think back on my childhood too, it's like how many kids were going to school and pretending like everything's okay.
100%. That's exactly.
You don't know what they're going through at home, because I know I pretended like I was good.
Yep.
I was a smart ass. Nobody knew what happened.
Yep.
So I mean, it happens a lot. I mean, it happens to maybe, I don't want to say most, but more than we think, I bet.
Having my kids now grow up in a different socioeconomic setting than when I grew up in, I'm realizing that, some people are terrible parents, but not everyone. Some kids have it pretty damn good, and their parents are good, and they're doing the right things. And I certainly try to do all the right things for my kids. It's like a fine line. Like I said, they don't have a phone. We don't spoil them, but I also want to give them everything they want. My daughter the other day was like, Dad, Drake's coming. And I'm like, oh.
Drake, yeah.
And I'm like, Shell, I know she wants to go to Drake. I got to do it. I have to take her, don't I? She's like, she really wants to go see Drake. She's 13. I'm like, all right, we're going. But I drive them crazy, because anytime we go to any event, sports, anything, I said, listen, if you want to go, here's the deal. With like 5 minutes to go, I'm leaving. I'm not
beat the crowd.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't want to be stampeded at the end. I get a crazy like crowd anxiety. So he was like playing the last song. I'm like, you ready? And she's like, Dad, come on. I go, dude, we had a deal on this. She's like, oh, pouts the whole way home. I'm like, I bought you the damn $140 sweatshirt. You went to see Drake. And then the next day she's like, Dad, I'm sorry. I was pouting. I was just having so much fun.
Yeah.
And she's, you know, I tried to do like one-on-one things with them periodically. Like the little one went to UFC recently. My daughter, when we lived in LA, we flew to New York and saw Frozen on Broadway, which was awesome. Just the two of us. I took the oldest one, went to see Dude Perfect in Louisville. We stayed in a hotel. That was the least favorite for me. It was so boring. And then at the end, they did like a church sermon. It was like strange. But I got to find the middle one. All he wants to do is outdoors things. So he keeps telling me like, Dad, can we go fishing? Can we go hunting? I'm like, I'm going to find something for us to do. But
now you can shoot a bow.
Now I know how to shoot a bow. Yeah. That was so therapeutic, by the way.
Oh yeah. I mean, as I mentioned in there, the thing about archery is like, you can't be distracted. We're distracted in life all the time.
Yep.
Nonstop. But in archery, that's all you're thinking about.
Oh, like it was today, so rewarding.
Yeah, you were so focused on the act of releasing the arrow perfect and hitting that X.
It was so fun.
And that's what's beautiful about it.
Yeah.
Is it takes everything.
I can't wait to get home and show the little one, show my middle guy, Luke, the bow that you were generous enough to give me. By the way, for everyone listening, I got the sickest bow ever. Don't have bow envy. But yeah, I'm so excited. I just can't wait to tell the kids about it. They love stuff like this.
I'm going to give you that bow here in a minute, but I was just thinking of one other question that I had. And it's like, because you've been so successful with your running, I'm just curious, you know, I think a lot of people, accept the fact that, their performance is going to suffer because they're older, right? You know, people talk about, you know, back in whatever, 20 years ago, I could have done this. But to me, I feel better now than I ever have. So it's like, why would my performance need to suffer? I'm curious about how you feel. Like, have you peaked, or are you still getting better?
For like 15 years in a row, I kept running faster races. And last year, maybe the last 2 years, I haven't been able to run faster. I ran a 2:29:10 in Chicago at the Chicago Marathon. I was less than a minute off my best marathon when I was 52. And on that day I was like, damn, I can do it. I can like tweak a couple things. But then like when running today, I'm like, man, I am so, compared to marathon shape, so out of shape. Like it just takes so much effort to get back there.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think that if I continue to, if I focus, there's always things that we can fix. Like I can eat a better diet. I can clean up my diet a little bit and just eat more like high quality food, not to lose or gain weight, just to eat better for fuel. I think there's a few things, but if I think I peaked, then it's so easy to like let that be the first step towards like getting weaker and like backsliding. I like to stay in strong enough shape so that I can show up and do anything. Like people recognize you as an insane runner, hunter. I love knowing I can show up and run with that guy and hold my own. We can lift weights together and I'm not getting like blown out of the gym.
No, you're strong. You're strong.
That's the whole goal of life. When people are like, what are you training for? I'm like, life. What do you mean, what am I training for? That doesn't have to be a goal. So I do think in a crazy way that I can run a little faster, but I would also say age is like such a convenient excuse for a lot of people. It's like once you submit to that, it's easy to subconsciously have this silent agreement with yourself that it's like, well, I can't really get better. It's all downhill from here. So accept that. And like you said earlier, I don't feel any different. There's a couple things when I look in the mirror, I'm like, holy shit, my face looks old. Honestly, and my eyesight is deteriorating. I need reading glasses. Right when I turned 45, for the 40-year-olds out there, at 45, I was like, why can't I see my phone? Maybe I'm like, something's in my eye. And then eventually you're like, no, my eyesight is slipping. And I've always had 20/20 vision. But physically, I feel as strong. I mean, I can easily do 20 to 30 pull-ups for several sets. Like that's my daily exercise. I never skip doing pull-ups. And the only difference is, like I said, the eyesight, I look older in my face, but I don't think my body does. It's like holding up, and I don't recover well from like missing sleep. So like if I'm flying, if I travel like, across several time zones, I notice that I don't bounce back the way I used to. Like when I was a kid, we could go out drinking and drugging all night and sleep 2 hours and get up and like, by noontime, you can't even remember that you were hungover.
Right.
I don't drink now, but if I did have a drink, and occasionally I have a drink with my wife, like I feel it for like the entire next day. And I'm like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
It never fails.
Right. But performance-wise, you're still pushing hard.
Yeah. So I just give a quick shout out to my guys at Athletic Brewing for the non-alcoholic beer. It makes me feel a little bit still like it's funny that there's a stigma to like not drinking. Like somehow that makes you like less tough.
Right.
But those guys have, they've done a killer job. Bill Schufeld and the team there, he was just featured in the Wall Street Journal, and I'm super proud to be associated with the team at Athletic Brewing. And I know they were like super excited. They were like, we'll send some beer for the podcast. I'm like, man, I'm not bringing a product on someone else's podcast. But they're big fans of the podcast. So shout out to Athletic Brewing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I was just curious about that just because I know you're a freak, dude. I mean, I wouldn't say that, like you said, today's run, you said something about you're so far off from Earth. It was like way different. I mean, 4 miles straight uphill. I mean, but it was hard.
I all bullshit aside, I did not expect. I knew you were a good runner. I didn't expect that you were that good. Like honestly, I mean it as a compliment. Like I was like, damn, he's gonna slow down as we get further into this hill because we're moving. And if anything, you got faster. And on the descents, I said, I had to tell Cam, I'm like, you go ahead. This is too technical for me. I don't want to fall and bust my head open, which is definitely possible. Descending is a very technical skill, but man, I was super impressed with your skills on the mountain.
Well, thank you. But how I want to end this is giving you your brand new bow. Just keep hammering Hoyt Torex. And you shot amazing today. What I do in this podcast, every guest I have here, I consider an outlier. I mean, sometimes people might not know they're an outlier. I have to explain why this person is incredible in their field. I don't have to explain you to anybody. People can just look at you, know of you, already know about you, and they know that Ken Rideout is the fucking man, and he's a stud. He's obviously an outlier. So this is how I love to end the podcast, is sharing my life with outliers, people who I respect, people who have helped me grow or pull back the blinders on something and see something from a different perspective than you have in regard to so much, in regard to your life, your challenges, your addictions, your performances. And so I just want to end this podcast giving you your bow and telling you how much you mean to me. And
man,
thank you very much.
Make me cry.
Ken. Oh,
You're
thank you.
so kind, so generous. I literally told my wife, I'm like, if I like this shit, I'm gonna buy one of those really nice bows. And when you said you're taking this home with you, I was like, come on, man. Come on. I'm just so honored. I mean, when I look at your wall of fame at the bow rack.
Bow rack, yeah.
Bow rack, and see all the guests that have been on the show, it's so surreal to me to think like, I'm not in the group with these people. These are like legends. So to be here with you and have you say those nice things about me is, man, it's so surreal and so humbling. And I was having a very, very bad week, and I feel a lot better. And so thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Oh, brother, you're a legend. And I'm so thankful that through Rob and Huberman and, your circle here, we got connected. And I'm thankful for your friendship, and being able to spend the day with you and share my life with you, as I said. So thank you. I hope everybody enjoys the podcast. I know they will, because you have so much to offer. But thank you, Ken. I appreciate you.
Thank you, and thank you to your awesome fans. When I put on Strava that I was leaving to go, I just put in the comment, like, going to Oregon to run with Cam Hanes. Like, if I get normally 5 comments, there were like 500 comments of like, yes, I've been waiting for this. So thank you to all. Thank you, Cam, and thank you to the fans who've been so supportive and awesome. I love everyone, and this is such an honor. Thank you.
All right, brother. Keep hammering.
Every step I take, I move my truth. Every time they tell me stop, I use. Every comment, hate that makes my fuel. Gather up my energy and boom. I hear them talking, saying the way that I move is so reckless. That is a part of my mind I've been blessed with. Giving my blood, so I am relentless. My fault, they want someone to blame. They sent their hate, it fuels my pace. I am Roy Tough, I am the change, the fuel.